Good evening, everybody. Starting to get a little bit closer to the proper start time. I still need to get dinner, so not perfect, but we're moving in the right direction. I hope you're all doing well. We're going to be back for some old world in a little bit, but I am going to take a minute just to make sure everything is set up properly. I know Twitch has been giving me a little bit of attitude about my bit rate lately. But it looks like we're in good shape. All right. So we are on to what I'll call my third Philippic, which is not really what a Philippic is, but it's hard to come up with titles. I'm playing the Heroes of the Aegean scenarios. So it's weird to call myself a long time old world player, because I definitely don't play old world like a long-term player, but I have actually probably been playing it longer than people might think, and it's one of the reasons I'm a little embarrassed, because one of the things that tends to happen, I've talked about this before, I find it very easy to fall back on Civ habits, and I'll sometimes feel like I'm making some very good progress in the game and I'm really getting a handle on it. And then I'll either have some time away or I'll play something else, and I sort of undo some of those lessons. Now, none of this should be taken as a criticism of the game or even a caution if you feel like you might be in the same place. This is a wonderful 4X game, and I'm also quite partial to Mohawk games. They've also made a wonderful economic RTS called Off-Road Trading Company. But the thing is that I sometimes, it's a little bit like writing for me. I used to write a lot of satire, and some of you know I've gotten back into the habits of that, but it's never quite what it was before. And there's sort of this, I guess this time where I'm mourning the writer that I used to be, and that can be a bit of a challenge, right? Because you don't necessarily grow out of that. And there's a similar feeling, I think, in some cases with Old World, where I see some of the situations I find myself in, and I'm like, I was a little bit better at combat than I'm really showing here. But I spent a little too long on the part that I sort of recognize as a fault in myself. It is actually one of these very weird things that I think maybe only I can ever really say is a nice feature of it, but it's a chance for me to learn the game, not learn the game, but kind of have those opening moments all over again, right? Like sometimes just rediscovering little bits is good fun. And there are some things that I haven't tried yet. So for those of you that are not familiar with this game at all, it has a few different ways that you can play. So it's a 4X game. It's, I think probably people's default for a 4X game would be you jump in, it's some sort of randomly generated, maybe is probably not communicating the thing that people want. But if I say procedurally generated, then people start thinking of No Man's Sky. But essentially, you can select a bunch of parameters for a map, and you start from a roughly equal position. Old World is unique in the sense that you are a newcomer on the world stage, and so very often your neighbors will be more powerful than you. Although if you lower the difficulties, or go play on the lower difficulties, the difference isn't as pronounced. But in any case, I think most people's kind of standard idea of playing any kind of 4X game, and this could be, the Amplitude stuff, this could be Gladius, Relics of War, this could be Civilization. There's certainly no shortage of good 4X games to play. And I think most of them have that element in common where you can start off with a map and essentially have a brand new game on a brand new world and sort of figure out where things are. But Old World has more to offer. So in the base game, there was a scenario for Carthage, which I also quite like because it's a nice little it's a chance to have some history. There was a really kind comment in the last stream where someone said that they liked that I took the time to read the history, and this is one of the things that keeps me coming back to these games. And I think there's one thing I appreciate particularly about Old World, which is its focus on the ancient world. So one of the DLC that was released was the Sacred and the Profane, and so that deals quite a bit with religion and philosophy. More so religion, so Neoplatonism is one of the things that's brought in, and once you get to certain Neoplatonists, particularly people like Iamblichus and Proclus, it's a very, very fuzzy line between the two. I mean, these distinctions that we make are often anachronistic, but in any case, whatever your particular interest in history might be, I think things like The Rise of Carthage is just a nice little chance to maybe explore some history that you may not have encountered, or become familiar with topics that you've touched on before. Now, if you own the game when it came out on Steam, and this would be on Epic or on Steam, you would get a copy of Heroes of the Aegean as well, and that's a considerably larger scenario set, although there were things for the base game added as well, particularly new nations that you can play. But you'll notice that I haven't actually made that much progress in it. I had tried the Rise of Macedon building a hegemony when when it first came out, and I actually found this quite a challenging scenario. The scenario has been made easier between now and when it first came out, but on top of that, another factor that I was running into is just I wasn't that good at the combat. In fact, this is a problem that I have with RTSs. It's all SimCity to me, right? I very much enjoy building things. And it is fair to say that Old World is definitely a war game. That doesn't mean that there aren't other things going on. The depth of the stories and the different interactions that you can have, I really think add something. But this is... I want to be a little careful about how I say this, because I think this developer's doing interesting things, but I believe it's Proxy who are coming out with, I think it's called Zephon? It's a name of a type of angel. I just don't remember the exact name. Anyways, they did Gladius Relics of War and Pandora First Contact, I think it's called. And they have been coming out kind of strong. And I get that they are trying to talk up what they do well. I think the only problem, inevitably, the challenge becomes when you are trying to draw the contrast, it can be challenging not to have that come across as being unnecessarily critical of what's come before. And so I know they frequently talk about how combat isn't very good in 4X games and how Zephon's going to change that. And I definitely saw some people on the forums sort of saying, I play Gladius. But I think I understand where they're coming from. They've had a couple of interesting, I guess, betas, alphas, previews, whatever they are. And certainly the game looks quite good. But I suppose my own counter to the idea of combat in 4X would be a game like Old World. I think Old World actually handles this in an interesting way. Hey, Mr. Nuclear Monster, you're right at the start. Thank you very much for the host. What have you been playing? I'm sorry, I guess I can't really do much of a shout-out for you other than to shout you out to your own people, but I really appreciate you stopping by. But yeah, I don't know. I would say that Old World is probably my candidate that I would hold up for it. But it does have this. Man, there is a whole world of modding that I am largely ignorant of. Super Minox, I'm assuming that you came from Nuclear Monster. Thank you very much for coming along. This is going to be a very different change of pace. A very, very different kind of game if you're coming from Doom. Now you really need to sleep. Absolutely no worries there. I think the best a streamer can ever ask is for a chance to entertain you, but when you sign up for one broadcaster, that doesn't mean that you have to stay for the other one. So have a wonderful rest, and we will... well, I hope I get a chance to see you perhaps in Nuclear Monsters channel. But either way, Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for waving. Pleasant dreams. No, I'm familiar with late nights. I'm not begging for your view. I appreciate you stopping by, and I don't want you to take that as anything but appreciation. Oh, well, Mr. Nuclear Monster, I'm not going to repeat too much of myself on this, but you've actually chosen not a bad stream to come in on. I am going to be a little bit later on a scenario that that I've struggled with in the past, so it'll be interesting to see if I can go through. But I love being able to have some back and forth about what the game is about. So if you have questions, please keep them coming. And one of the things I was just talking about was the different entryways into the game. So there's a standard sort of 4X kind of game. I know I was talking about Proxy Studios and all that, but that's fine. You can go check them out on your on your own time. So there's the standard sort of jump into a procedurally generated map, pick some parameters that you like and go and play the game. But there are some scenarios here, and I actually think the scenarios do a decent job of sort of easing you into the game. It's a bit mixed, so I found Seizing Destiny quite challenging, even as somebody who kind of knows how the game works. But overall, I don't think it's a bad way to approach it, particularly if you are interested in a certain period of history. So if you are interested in Carthage, or if you are, you want to do Thermopylae and Marathon, the Heroes of the Aegean scenarios are also interesting. But they did add the learn by playing scenarios, so they're sort of increasing in difficulty, but they also give you different nations to play. And so as a result, you get to a few different perspectives. But we're going to be doing the Macedonia. Well, there's more than one Macedonia. The Philip II one. Oswin Meow, lovely to see you again. We've got a nice host from Mr. Nuke. Actually, you know what? We'll spread the word. So Mr. Nuclear Monster kindly hosted off of, sorry, what was the name of it? Sunlust Doom. I'm actually, if you can just give me a second, I'm going to make a note of that. If you don't mind, if you have any recommendations for getting into these kinds of things, Mr. Nuclear Monster, like I know there's I think it's called like Zed Doom or something like that. But if you have a chance to let me know what I need to get into the weird and wonderful world of Doom after Doom, I would appreciate. I'm perfectly capable of Googling, but if you have something that you can reference, I would appreciate it. And I always sometimes feel that Oswin is going to be a little shy about this, because I think Oswin Meow started streaming just to do their own thing. But I have had such a wonderful time hanging out with Oswin, who I think was most recently doing Helldivers, but I want to give special mention for playing Disco Elysium. I actually wound up gifting that game to someone as a direct result of Oswin's Disco Elysium stream. So two streamers who I don't want to just say nice things about because they've been very supportive of the broadcast, but in this case, two people who I happen to think are doing things that I don't want to say are another version of my stream. That would probably not be the right way to do it, but are doing something that I think probably most people who watch will be interested in. I'm not kidding. You have, first of all, gotten me. First of all, you've gotten me playing Disco Elysium again, and I have been having a very good chuckle. Every line is a banger, as we said before. But there was someone who I was watching, Prosciutto Fist, I think a few of you know, and I was like, I'm pretty sure Pro's really gonna enjoy that. So, Modern in release on Steam has a bunch of nice add-ons for free as well. Oh, lovely. Okay, thank you. I also am a little more aware of some of the Doom mods because Outworld, a friend of mine, was playing Hexen recently. Was it Hexen or? Yeah, there's Heretic and Hexen and Heretic too. But yeah, that was making me a little more aware of all of these weird and wonderful extensions. Okay, so I've got a sales pitch ahead of me to tell Mr. Nuclear Monster why why Old World is a really interesting and fun game that you absolutely should play. So, first of all, there's this music. Unfortunately, we're going to be listening to a subset of the soundtrack because there's some copyrighted music in here, arguably some of the better songs, but that's just an opportunity for you to pick those things up, pick the game up and listen to them on your own. The music doesn't actually start playing until you research drama, which I think is a nice little touch. Now, this game can sometimes trip you up in the sense that there will be familiar items, but they don't necessarily do the same thing. So for instance, civics, not hammers, this has very little to do with production. There is no sort of universal production resource, unlike the other 4X games. In fact, if you're interested in game development, there is a talk that the lead on this project, Soren Johnson, he gave a talk sort of about the inheritance of different genres, and you can really see how Old World really reflects this kind of game, this kind of project where you say, okay, we're gonna make a 4X, and we're going to ask, what would a 4X look like if it was invented today? It's not necessarily ignoring what came before, but what it is doing is it's asking what was essential for the genre and what might be an area for improvement or development. Basically, what things are done because they're always in 4X games. And it has some really interesting answers to those questions. So the resources we have right now, we are losing money. Currently losing 296 gold or wealth money a turn. There's food, which, as you might gather, does have a relationship with growth, but not quite the same way that you would normally think. Iron, which is going to be a bit more oriented towards military, but not exclusively. Stone, get a little bit more oriented towards construction, but as with anything, it has more than one purpose. Wood, which is actually quite a precious resource. It's one that you're not able to get as easily at the start of the game. And orders. We're going to talk about orders a little bit later. Now you'll notice that there's a little gold sign beside these, so you can actually buy and sell. So for instance, if I want to recover some of the treasury, I can actually sell some of my food because it's got a good price here, 6.8, so you sell it at half the rate of the other one. So if I wanted to sell wood, I would get 3.9, but of course I don't have as much wood, and so as a result it's a bit more precious. I can also buy, so if I wanted, if I knew I was going to be doing a lot of military construction, maybe I would want to buy up the iron or the stone, although I'm doing quite well in terms of acquiring it. So there's, this is the trade and such. The other resources that you'll have, science, I think, is a pretty universal. That's also largely unchanged, I think would be fair to say. There's a neat way that they do technologies in this game, but I'd say science is a bit more consistent with some of the other 4X games. Civics, again, your ability to govern, which is going to be a large part of the game. All of these characters you can build relationships with. Prince Alexander, where we've been hearing some interesting things about him. He's currently being tutored by some philosopher. He's a bit of an egghead, and we're busy fighting. It's why we've only got one eye. But anyways, we hope for good things for our son. And we've got training going on here. Now, training can be used, again, it's one of these things where at the surface, it's going to be, related to achieving certain military objectives, but you can actually wind up doing a number of other things with it. So one thing I'm going to get done here, I think we're going to focus. I'm not quite ready to start a war with the Athenians yet. I think it would be nice to get an idea. In fact, one thing that would be nice if we could somehow blockade the Athenians, but I am going to guess that 2 ships are not going to do the trick. I suspect I'm going to be able to take out the Thracian prince. Our soldiers take the loyal Thracian chief captive, and they force him before the throne in fetters. Head held high, he asks the court to show mercy, to spare his young son in exchange for his own life. What is our answer? So we can send them both away in chains. We gain legitimacy for enslaving a tribal chief. Spare the boy but kill the father. So we get +1 charisma. And fallback for compassionate. I should actually figure out what that means. Fallback. If an event would grant a trait that is a strength or a weakness and the character's already at the limit of 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses, then the event will modify the character's attributes instead. The specific attribute change depends on the trait. So in this case, we get charisma. Or I will raise the boy as my own. So we lose legitimacy for that, which will be tied to our ability to get things done. Agus the Robust, adopted by King Philip the Invincible, and could change succession and anger characters who are bypassed. I think we will spare the boy but kill the father. And this is largely just so that I can get the benefit of the I'm sorry, words fail me. The extra charisma. So, this unit is going to attack me. Now, if it gets a crit, I'm in trouble. But in this case here, we just had the opportunity to take out the last of the... Oh, hang on. Right, we need to kill the unit before the Thracians are off the map. But yeah, I wanted to clear these out, and then what we can do... I'll obviously have to heal the ship. In fact, we can get started on that. It wouldn't hurt for me to try and build a little bit more of a fleet to try and, like I said, if I can somehow blockade... So essentially what would happen here, if we force them to... Actually, maybe it's not the ships that are the problem. But I was just thinking, if we can disrupt it in the middle here, then they have to walk to defend. So that means we could probably claim Thermopylae and Delphi, at least, or Delphi. And I'm not 100% sure whether or not we would have what it takes to claim this city. Or Ambracia. Sorry, it's not that I don't know how to say it. It's just, well, I think I know how to say it. I'm just trying to think. Okay. So this particular scenario does follow history closer than what you can sometimes do in most 4X games. So this one, King Philip's death is not prophesied, but you have dreams of your own demise. Philip needs to create the conditions under which his son Alexander will inherit the kingdom and make his mark on history. And Philip is going to be assassinated, at which point the scenario ends. So if we don't create the conditions that allow Alexander to conquer, then we can't move on to the Alexander scenarios. Let's take... Okay, so we've got governors, potential governors. I think in this case I'm going to rally the troops. That does cost me some orders, but we're likely going to be idle for the next little while. So we can at least move some troops in. Still have opportunities for governors. Interesting. All right, so you'll notice here that I've got these orders here. So one of the challenges that sometimes comes up in a 4X game is that you feel an obligation to move every unit, right? So if you have 20,000 workers, you're going to want to even just build a road for the sake of building a road. And there's different ways that they've handled that. So, for instance, Civilization 6, you get a finite use for workers. So, you'll either use them, or you're going to need to build something, or you need to build another one before you can have something to sort of take up your turn with. This is a shame. I should have moved this unit. Yeah, well. So the way, one of the ways that this handles it, and I think there might have been a story about, this might have originally intended to be some sort of a mobile game mechanic. You can sort of see how it's a little bit like Farmville, right? Where you have a certain amount of energy. But essentially your legitimacy, among other factors, will give you a certain number of orders. As you can see here, it's giving me a breakdown in terms of what the orders are. And one thing that's costing me orders are my improvements, but again, I want to have an economy, particularly getting the money under control. But in this case here, you do need to be kind of choosy in terms of what you spend your turn doing, because you can't do everything. You can buy more using orders. There's a couple of other options, using training. I think there's a couple of other options which we don't have right now, but you can do underhanded things. I think that's a neat little innovation, which I haven't seen done in a 4X game yet. Good evening, Cured. Can't stick around tonight, but I hope you have a good stream. Thank you, Cured. I'm kind of happy to be getting started a little bit closer to my usual start time, so I appreciate you stopping by. I hope you have a good evening, and we'll catch you when you are feeling free. All right, I'd love to put down a treasury, but we don't have the developing culture required. Now, one thing I didn't talk about in terms of what these do. So we were talking a bit how food is sort of related to growth. What I mean by that is that a settler will cost 75 food, and then there are certain specialists that have a food cost as well. But if you want your city to grow in terms of citizens, that actually comes from a specific growth resource or element. Now, chances are, you'll have certain things which will give you food as well as growth. But the same works for other construction. So, for instance, if you have lots of barracks and training and archery ranges and such, then you're going to have more trading, which means that you're going to be able to build military units faster. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be good at building buildings. And with those, you use civics. So in some cases, it actually makes sense to have quite a few stone quarries and whatnot, just to be able to get the resources you need to expand, which is exactly what we're going to do here. I'm going to get another stone cutter. And again, I think I'm okay leaving everything else idle. But I might want to be a little more choosy in a future stream. Oh, that's interesting. The mongrel. One day on the training grounds, Prince Alexander notices a lame mongrel begging for scraps. He takes the creature into his care and nurses him back to health. From that point forward, the creature never leaves Alexander's side. The dog possesses a complete devotion to Alexander, who turns to you for guidance on how best to raise the pup. What training do you suggest? So treat the dog with affection and gentleness. He'll become compassionate. Should use a strict system of rewards and punishments, which will improve the military, or should beat and torment the creature for loyalty and he becomes ruthless. I wouldn't exactly associate compassion with Alexander, but you know what? Let's go for it. A new type of animal discovered. Scientists in Pella claim to have discovered a new species of fish in the coastal waters outside the city during their migration season. These large pink fish often become the target of passing birds. What shall we do with them? So if we want, we can spend a lot of money to scare the birds away so that the fish may thrive. Now, the good news here is that we would get some wisdom for that. The bad news is that that's actually quite costly at a time when our main moneymaker, our food, is becoming more scarce. Remember, we had 11 that we were earning in the previous turn. We're now down to 6. We could send an expedition to learn more about them for a one-time sort of boost of sudden boost of science, or try to attract tourists to see the beautiful flocks. Now, this one is tempting because of the extra culture that it would give me, so that'll give me like a better city. But in this case, I think we will send an expedition. All right. So now we get to talk a little bit about technology. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to wait until it comes up on the next units. Now, windmill is pretty much a no-brainer here. That'll be boosting up my wood, which is something that I want. Let's also work out this governor. So this is going to be a little bit more of a maintenance turn. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to organize by the highest culture. So Ephesus doesn't have a governor yet. And apparently he wasn't a candidate for a general? I'm a little surprised by that. All right. Oh, I have others. So Dodona. He's corrupt, so that's going to cost me money. I don't think I can afford that. Normally I'd like to, but the treasury is really straining. Alright, let's get the production out of the way. So we could do a rancher. Now, normally I wouldn't go for this. Normally we'd be focusing on food, but this one actually gives me orders per season as well as food. Sorry, this costs me food. It doesn't give me food, but orders are still something useful. Also, this is specialized, so actually we're going to go for the miner here first. Is that smartest? No. Because I don't need the resource right away. Trapezus. Can't build treasury, sadly. We can put down another stonecutter, though. I think it's all the same. Nope. This one gives me more. Pella. We've built another military unit. Now, I'm not opposed to building the rancher and the fisher here. Oh man, there's a lot that we can build. So this is a bit of a shame, right? Because this is the source for my best units. But this is also a city where we can actually get quite a bit of a boost to our economy on the things that we really want. So I'm gonna find the fastest way. So it's 6. Okay, we'll solve the treasury first. Fish, ranch. I don't think I have much else in terms of options, so we're just gonna have to let time go by. Can't build a treasury. So this one is a little less focused in terms of what the characters can do. Now, normally I wouldn't have gone for the farm, except for the fact that we do kind of need the food, and it's only 2 turns, or 2 seasons. Yeah, 2 turns, 2 seasons, to be able to expand out to the woods again. So I am going to go for the farmer. All right. So what I'm going to do here, in addition to what the game is guiding me towards, I'm going to make sure that my workers are occupied. So this is a barracks, right? Yeah, we're going to build another barracks. All right, what are you doing? We've got a grove. Okay. Lumber is probably what I want to do. But I'm also thinking I haven't really put down any military buildings here. Well, the other option is a market. Okay, so I wouldn't have normally done this, except that we really need the money. Again, doing all the military stuff. Okay, we're still waiting on a miner so that we can claim this gold mine. What have we got here? Well, we've got a market, but that didn't really give us what we need. The thing is, right now, we've got everything that we need in terms of military buildings, so we can actually sort of afford to properly invest in the economy here. I am slightly inclined towards building some more quarries. And it's not that I feel particularly driven to get some stone. It's just that it's nice to have a few quarries. I'm not going to build them around this, though. These are probably going to turn into urban improvements. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a quarry down here. Okay, it's recommending a windmill here, and I don't really disagree with the judgment. Not entirely sure the Colossus is what we need in Pella right now. Like it's a cool flex, but I don't think we built the... No, we did. Okay. I mean, culture wouldn't hurt for a few of these things. There's also the Hamlet. And then we'd have the theater. Yeah, you know what? Hamlet's just what the doctor ordered here. Okay, so last thing I'm going to do here is just double check that all of the workers that I want working are working. Okay, so this Byreme... So it's a bit of a shame that I have to do this. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, I can anchor. Well, I can anchor, but it doesn't get me somewhere I want to be. So anchor's good for 3 tiles. It's as good as I'm going to get. So that's just so I can move this unit when the time comes. Okay, I'm gonna leave these units in place. I'll promote where I can. I'll make sure that the basics are handled, but we're not gonna go to war with any of these guys yet. Okay, this we're holding the position for, although this one... I think we're going to start moving towards the invasion here. I don't really see myself using these units anytime soon, so we'll put them on sentry. We don't have a general for this, so... I am starting to run out of orders. I think we probably want the onager before we go too much further. Okay, so we'll choose our research. So we can get a free war elephant, a free camel archer, we can move towards scholarship or stirrups. Now, the way that this works, you get to draw a number of cards. It's not always 4, but it often is. And there's still a tech tree, so the order of things is determined. There might be an option to randomize them. But what you do, there's a little bit of a strategy in this, and whether this was intentional or not, I like to compare this with Twilight Struggle. So Twilight Struggle, you will have... in that game, you can draw cards, and if you play an opposing card, you will get the operations points from that, but it will be equivalent to your opponent playing that card. So a consequence of that is sometimes what you will do is you will have potentially very good cards that you will actually keep in your hand. And the reason for that is the decks are sort of shuffled in at certain points. And so one thing that you can do is you can actually affect the timing of certain results based on whether you decide to play or not play certain cards. And there's an entire strategy around deciding whether or not to do that. So there's a similar situation as far as the technology is concerned in Old World. So right now, I'm faced with a little bit of a dilemma here in terms of taking a free War Elephant or a free Camel Archer. If I don't pick either of these free ones, it will be... I will not get it again. So one of these I'm never going to see again. But what will happen here is if I want Scholarship or Stirrups, they are actually going to go into the discard pile, which means I need to go through the rest of the deck until I'll see them again. So the draw pile currently has Money Boost, Manor, Free Silk, Portcullis, and Doctrine. And then the discard pile has Metaphysics, Infantry Square, Free Ballista, and Cohorts. So we have, what is it, probably 2 more draws before we have a chance of seeing Scholarship or Stirrups again. Now, the other thing that I can do is I can say, well, maybe I want to accelerate the draws, and in that case, you go for something like the War Elephant or the Archer. In this case, I'll go for the Elephant. You can sort of see how that can become a bit of a strategy on its own, just in terms of thinking about what you need when when certain turns come up. Alright, we are now in a food deficit, but I don't think that's going to last forever. The Rally Troops mission of King Philip the Invincible has led to an event. Governor Ariston of Philippopolis, General the Maceman, has died in the field, and the Athenian alliance has begun construction of the mausoleum. Proud throngs. In an effort to inspire your forces, you visit every city in Macedonia, speaking before throngs of eager soldiers. The gatherings attract proud citizens who openly share their food and drink with the assembled crowds. The tour proves a rousing success, one with unintended benefits. Both Olynthus and Thessaloniki still ring with a celebration days after your departure. So 360 training as a result of that, and extra happiness in those 2 regions. Excellent news. Tax surplus. Philippopolis' treasury overflows with gold. The city's leaders call for immediate funding of key projects. We can save the gold for later and get some much-needed money in the treasury. We can hire more clerks to manage the state. We're already max in terms of our civics. Or hand out a bonus to the military. Again, we're doing very well. So in this case, save the gold for later seems to be the right option. Not raised in the court of Macedonia, Queen Consort Odata the Illyrian often raises questions about the way things are done in your court, from meals to religious ceremonies. The traditional ambassador Simon the Diplomat and the Chaonians have taken offense at some of your spouse's recent questions about the origins of the rules around the family landowning. The origins of the rules around family landowning, claiming that she is an interloper and aiming to usurp the traditions of Macedonia. So this is an example of how... this isn't the only game to do this, but this is definitely one that I think does it quite well. You will have these, all of these different relationships inside of your court, and these are sometimes drawn at random, sometimes they will be tied to a specific character. But in this case here, because I've got this queen consort, we got this event, and now we are going to have to choose. And sometimes we'll be making a choice out of political expediency. Sometimes we will have some traits that allow me to kind of get ahead. There's a number of different factors at play, but essentially here, because we had a traditional ambassador, and then we've got this Illyrian wife, these these events kind of all collided to create this awkward moment. So I can share my unease at the questions that my spouse has raised. Simon becomes endeared to me, and I also become uncouth. Encourage Queen Consort Odata the Illyrian to try to blend in, and she'll become disappointed with me, but I will be able to smooth things over with a family which doesn't necessarily think that much of me. or defend Queen Consort Odata the Illyrians' curiosity and drive to improve the court. So with that, the Chaonians would improve tolerance, but Simon would be upset with me. He's currently cautious, so I think we can afford to do that, and I'm thinking in the long run, if the Chaonians like tolerance, we might be able to sort of angle them accordingly, so we'll go for that option. Silk. Silk can come from silk. I'm trying to think if we get any advantage. Not really. I mean, it's nice to have, but I suppose the real advantage here would be, well, the money boost would the money boost is basically guaranteed, but then that might be coming along with a free ballista. Okay, so let me just take a quick look. The game, I think, was recommending a moat. So that would lead to architecture with its baths. Doctrine, which wouldn't really matter for this scenario. And manor, which would give me an improvement. I think I'm going to go for the portcullis. Alright, I'll confess I'm a little surprised that I still have candidates for governor. Oh, that's right. No, I'm not surprised. It's the guy who wants to empty my treasury. Okay, let's go back to sorting out what I want my workers to do. So we've got a giant forest that we can chop down, so more lumber mills. Alright, at long last, we can build the mine. Oh, what the hell do I want to do with you? Mining would make sense, and we've got some hills here, so we can put down some iron mines. Well, okay. Quarries would actually make a little more sense. They make sense because they will allow me to build other things in Apollonia. Okay, now one thing I want to do... Oh, that's right, I need to keep the city site. Alright, so that was a little silly for me to move that boat where I did. We're at the top on civics again, so we're gonna rally the troops. I also forgot that we've got this surplus of training, so I really should be using this to get some more orders, and we will be doing that momentarily, but I am going to just hold a few people in place. I gotta remember how the rock, paper, scissors game goes. Okay, so Maceman is anti-infantry as opposed to hoplites, which are anti-mounted. Okay, so yes, these are a counter to the... This is a tricky one because we are going to be going against people with pointy sticks. Let's go bonus against infantry. Do I really want to commit? Like, I'm more or less committing all of my defenses. You know what? We're going to go back to home. But after I sort out what I want to do here, I am tempted to go for a farmer, although that doesn't expand my borders. Farmer's 3 seasons, though, so we'll do the farmer, then the woodcutter to expand the borders. Larissa, gardener is mighty tempting, both for... It gives me a number of things. So it gives me borders, it gives me food, and it gives me a luxury resource. So, wish I was doing something different, but sometimes you work with what you've been given. Definitely a gold miner. Apollonia. I think it's not the most exciting option, but I am going to get them to make a settler. They're not really going to be contributing that much, so that gives that worker some time to do their thing. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to spend the training to buy another order. Probably should have moved these guys, to be honest. Oh well. King Philip the Invincible has been feeling quite poor lately and is now ill. Okay, I think we're going to wind up building military. Yeah. Alright, this unit's got a little bit less to do now. We've got a quarry. I think what I'm going to do is I'll push the quarries a little bit more. Okay, pass you over. Should maybe just double check to make sure that the workers, yeah, they're all doing their thing. We'll make these guys bloodthirsty. I don't use that as often. Starting to get a bit crowded here, but I'm going to find out very quickly how little that means. Okay, I still want to keep them on the training slot. Now, it is such a shame that I can't get this... Or, you know what? If we just move you off by 1 like so, now we get to heal you. Hopefully unlimbering will be sufficient to target. You know what? Probably need to move a bit... Well, hang on. There should be a range somewhere. I remember I consulted this not that long ago. I'm completely losing my mind. Well, I'm gonna take that 4 at its word, but oh, now that's unexpected. Okay. Nicomedia can build a treasury, so we will continue down that path. Oh, sorry, that's not Nicomedia. That is a guy. Shopkeeper will get me some money, which is probably where I want to go with this. Again, I'm turning off the option of getting more and useful upgrades, but we do actually still need to govern the kingdom. Philippopolis pretty much has to go for a treasury here. Okay, so I like that I'm able to do something with my scout. I'm going to focus on my boats a little bit more, but I'm going to get 300 in terms of training, so I'm going to do that with King Philip. Okay, we're already rallying the troops, but my Chancellor can probably smooth things over. Oh, wait, but this costs a bunch of money. I mean, bringing down the discontent level would be helpful for sure. But I feel like there are other things I can be doing with the civics. Pretty sure the Athenian alliance counts as, yeah, similar. Although we might be able to extract something from the Spartans. I'm gonna resist. Okay. Now, it occurred to me, because I'm already rallying the troops, I can't put on the charm offensive. We would want to do that with these folks anyway. Okay, so let's just say we don't have... There's nothing I want to be doing here. Oh, hang on. No, costs money. Okay. Let's think. There's actually very little that I need this scout for. So I guess technically this order was wasted, but... Your rally troops mission of King Philip the Invincible has led to an event. When you arrive in Olynthus to inspire the troops, an opportunity arises. Several units of infantrymen are about to embark on a wilderness expedition meant to test their survival strength, resourcefulness, and stealth. The officers in charge extend an invitation. If you have the time, they would love for you to join them in this bonding exercise and pass on your wisdom to the young recruits. So I could say, sadly, I do not have time, but good luck. Extra vision and stronger in woods, or of course I will join you in the wilds of Macedonia. Yeah, I mean, the main difference here just seems to be the experience for Philip, but I'm not going to turn down an opportunity to make my ruler stronger. Gymnasium training. All right. This one's a little bit more general, but this does give me a chance to talk about something I really like about Old World. If you see a little globe here, this is a web resource that will teach you more about one of the concepts that the game is talking about. In this case, the gymnasium. So, we are going to follow that link. It's often Wikipedia, but not always. And we're going to go learn something, despite our best efforts. The Gymnasium, Ancient Greece. The Gymnasium in Ancient Greece functioned as a training facility for competitors in the public games. It was also a place for socializing and engaging in intellectual pursuits. The name comes from the ancient Greek term gymnos, meaning naked or nude. Only adult male citizens were allowed to use the gymnasia. Olaf, you picked a great time to come in. When's the last time you've been to the gymnasium? Etymology. The word gymnasium is the Latinization of the Greek noun gymnasium, public place for physical exercises or exercise area. I'm not sure what that stands for, actually. Was Thursday. I hope you did it in the Grecian way. Bodily exercises and generally school, which in turn is derived from the common Greek adjective meaning naked or nude by way of the verb gymnazo, whose meaning is to train naked, train in gymnastic exercise, generally to train to exercise. The verb had this meaning because the athletes undressed in changing rooms called apoditeriums and trained naked, rubbing their bodies with olive oil and cleaning with the strigil. Strigil is a tool for cleanse. Oh yeah, I remember these things. It was you cover yourself in oil and then you scrape off all of the dirt. If anybody has seen HBO's Rome, this is an older TV series, but there's a couple of scenes, or I think there's one where Antony is having this done to him. Historically, the gymnasium was used for exercise, communal bathing, and later scholarly and philosophical pursuits. The English noun gymnast, first recorded in 1594, is formed from the Greek gymnastes, but in Greek this word means trainer, not athlete. The palestra was part of the gymnasium devoted to wrestling, boxing, and ball games. For the word gymnasium came also the term gymnastics. Organization. The gymnasium was formed as a public institution where young men over 18 received training and physical exercises. The supervision of the gymnasiums was entrusted to gymnastarchs, who were public officials responsible for the conduct of sports and games at public festivals, and who directed the schools and supervised the competitors. The gymnasii were teachers, coaches, and trainers of athletes. The Greek gymnasiums also held lectures and discussions on philosophy, literature, and music, and there were public libraries nearby. Origins, rules, and customs. The regulation of the Athenian gymnasium is attributed by Pausanias to Theseus. Solon made several laws on the subject. According to Galen, these were reduced to a workable system of management in the time of Cleisthenes, late 6th century and early 5th century BC, while the origins of physical exercise regimes was thought to be Sparta of Lacedaemon, or Knossos of Crete. The practice of exercising in the nude had its beginnings in the 7th century BC. The same purpose is frequently attributed to the tradition of oiling the body, a custom so costly that it required significant public and private subsidies. The practice was the largest expense in the gymnasia. Good lord. That actually, I like that detail, and I did not know that. Clinias of Crete describes the origin of the tradition of Cretan gymnasia and common meals in Book 1 of Plato's Laws, and ascribes them to the mythological lawgiver Rhadamanthus. The Laws, by the way, is by far Plato's longest work. Also his last. The original iterations of gymnasia were large open areas at city outskirts, not enclosed structures. The athletic contests for which the gymnasium supplied the means of training and competition formed part of the social and spiritual life of the Greeks from very early on. The contests took place in honor of heroes and gods, sometimes forming part of a periodic festival or the funeral rites of a deceased chief. The free and active Greek lifestyle, spent to great extent in the open air, reinforced the attachment to such sports, and after a period of time the contest became a prominent element in Greek culture. The victor in religious athletic contests, though he gained no material prize other than a wreath, was awarded with honor and respect of his fellow citizens. Training of competitors for the greatest contest was a huge matter of concern, and special buildings were provided by the state for such use, with management entrusted to public officials. A victory in the great religious festivals was counted an honor for the whole state. Historical development. The ancient Greek gymnasium soon became a place for more than exercise and training. This development arose through the recognition by the Greeks of the strong relation between athletics, education, and health. Accordingly, the gymnasium became connected with education on the one hand and medicine on the other. Physical training and maintenance of health and strength were chief parts of children's earlier education. Except for time devoted to letters and music, the education of young men was solely conducted in the gymnasium, where provisions were made not only for physical pedagogy, but for instruction in morals and ethics. As pupils grew older, informal conversation and other forms of social activity took the place of institutional systematic discipline. Since the gymnasia were favorite resorts of youth, they were frequented by teachers, especially philosophers. Philosophers and sophists frequently assembled to hold talks and lectures in the gymnasia. Thus, the institution became a resort for those interested in less structured intellectual pursuits, in addition to those using the place for training in physical exercises. In Athens, there were 3 great public gymnasia: the Academy, the Lyceum, and Synosarges, each of which was dedicated to a deity whose statue adorned the structure. Each of these 3 was rendered famous by association with a celebrated school of philosophy. Antisthenes founded a school at Synosarges, from which, say, the name Cynic derives. Plato founded a school that gathered at the Academy, after which the school was named, making the gymnasium famous for hundreds of years. And the Lyceum, at the Lyceum, Aristotle founded the Peripatetic school. Plato considered gymnastics to be an important part of education, see Republic 3 and parts of Laws, and according to him, it was the sophist Prodicus who first pointed out the connection between gymnastics and health. Having found gymnastic exercises beneficial to his own weak constitution, Prodicus formulated a method that generally became accepted and was subsequently improved by Hippocrates. Galen also put great stress on the proper and frequent use of gymnastics. Throughout other ancient Greek medical writings, special exercises are prescribed as cures for specific diseases, showing the extent to which Greeks considered health and fitness connected. The same connection is commonly suggested by experts today. Organization in Athens. In Athens, 10 gymnasiarchs were appointed annually, one from each tribe. These officials rotated through a series of jobs, each with unique duties. They were responsible for looking after and compensating persons training for public contests, conducting the games at the great Athenian festivals, exercising general supervision over competitor morale, and decorating and maintaining the gymnasium. Beneath them in the organizational structure were 10 Sophronistae, responsible for observing the conduct of the youths and especially for attending all their games. Pedotrebeia and Gymnastae were responsible for teaching the methods involved in various exercises, as well as choosing suitable athletics for the youths. The Gymnastae were also responsible for monitoring the constitution of the pupils and prescribing remedies for them if they became unwell. The Alepiate oiled and dusted the bodies of the youths, acted as surgeons, and administered any drugs prescribed. According to Galen, there also existed a teacher specifically devoted to instruction in ball games. Construction. Gymnasia were typically large structures containing spaces for each type of exercise, as well as a stadium, palestra, baths, and other porticos for practice in bad weather, and covered porticos where philosophers and other men of letters gave public lectures and held disputations. Most Athenian gymnasia were located in suburban areas due to the large amount of level space required for construction. Additionally, these areas tended to be cooler and closer to a good water supply than similar areas in central Athens. All right, let's hear about a nude and oiled up Alexander, shall we? Alexander has been working on his physical refinement, practicing athletics in the gymnasium each day in a wide range of sports from boxing to discus throwing. He regularly wins competitions in large towns and minor cities and is now eager for a greater challenge. He asks you to sponsor games in Aigai, where the best athletes of Macedonia may compete, and furthermore, that you select the nature of the competition. What sport shall the athletes of Macedonia compete in? Call the best archers in Greece. Wrestling and boxing will test Alexander. Horse and running races will find the swiftest among us, and Alexander's time would be better spent in training. Let's do wrestling and boxing. Okay, as always, we're going to make sure that the workers are pushing the city forward. They want us to build the museum. Again, I don't dislike that in principle. In practice, I have a problem with it. Let's build an omelet. Okay, more quarries for you. Okay, that's the workers taken care of. I have a small problem here with this family. I think in this case we are going to... We're going to get King Philip to... Again, it costs money. Nope, we're rallying the troops again. All right. I can't really get my people that much closer. Mind you, it's a nice problem to have. Okay, so we don't have any spare training to go for the orders with. I know it's not the most imaginative thing of me, but I'm going to keep making woodcutters. I'm out of citizens, so I have a couple of options here. I can build the walls. The advantages of the walls would be that I can start giving back some of that discontent. I think instead I'm going to build something for the military. So can't build a boat, so we'll build a ballista. Can't build a treasury. We're already working on a settler in Ephesus. I'll go for another ballista. So I think I should probably start moving the ships a little bit sooner. I'm gonna go for the money boost here. Sorry, first thing I'm gonna do is settle the workers. So amphitheater will eventually bring in some money. Whether it does so in time is an open question, but I'm going to leave that as a tomorrow me problem. Okay. Range time. I like the idea of a garrison, I just don't like the idea of a garrison here. This'll do. Okay, now this bireme's in a bit of a special place. So the thing that I want to do with this bireme is I want to make sure that I'm slamming into the enemy ships here. And it's the other bireme that needs to be fighting. Oh, actually both of them get to be grapplers. But that's fine, because the purpose of the boats here is not so much going to be to win the fight, it's going to be to lock down the Athenian navy. If we can hold this area here, or even this area here, it means... Actually, you know what? we may or may not be able to intercept Athenian ships. It's not entirely clear to me. Alright, let's build that gardener because that's what I need to make my family happy. Am I the sort of man to build another ballista? No, I'm the sort of man to build a worker for the city that clearly doesn't have it. Alright. They've already got a treasure. Well, we can always put another stonecutter down. That's not a problem. Not above getting a little extra training. Hang on. Okay, yes, that thing's already moved. Now this is going to be a turn where we do have some surplus orders. Whether or not I find a good use for them is another question. Okay, this is interesting. So we're ending with surplus orders. I can appoint a... my wife who is mad at me. There's my spy master. Okay. I think what's going to happen, we're probably going to start the war next turn. You have rallied the military, resulting in higher morale and discipline. Macedonia plus 310 training. We can do... I think we'll do the manor in this case. So I'm going to save just because I am a bit boneheaded when it comes to these sorts of things. But obviously at this point we're going to change our focus. Your court awaits your command. Shall we declare war on the Athenian alliance? From what we know, our military is fairly evenly matched with the Athenian alliance, and so the court urges you not to get overconfident. Proceed with war preparations. So the one thing that we haven't figured out is the state of the... the state of the Athenian navy. Okay. Ah, now that sucks. That might be one that I'm actually willing to spend a whole lot of training and orders for, but let's see what happens at Thermopylae first. So the aim here is to get as much of the ranged in before I commit to anything else. Wow. I'm trying to decide if I want to spend. Let's I actually don't mind keeping some of these in reserve. I'll pay a little extra. New recruits! Seizing portions of Thermopylae, our soldiers encounter Athenian jails full of foreign captives. Once freed, many of these prisoners offer to replenish our forces on the front lines. Shall we let these prisoners join our military ranks, or do we grant them asylum in Larissa? Arm them and send them into battle. So that's one we pretty much have to pay for. Now, I should expect that I will potentially lose some units here. But I definitely feel that that's a worthwhile that's a worthwhile price to pay. Trapezis. We've got our stonecutters, so I think now we invest in officers. And I'm gonna do something a little foolish. Yeah, I can't pay for 10 orders. Let's see how the turn goes. God damn! 4 boats? This thing's dead. I didn't even... I totally didn't realize they had this many ships. Alright, well, lesson learned. At least they didn't go for the Honecker. I'll confess, I'm a little surprised at how they're doing this, but... doing a good job of taking out my forces, though. Yeah, so I prevented any kind of blockade of the units. Probably gonna lose 2 or 3 as a... oh, not as bad as all that. Paideia. More learning. Paideia, referred to as the rearing and education of the ideal member of the ancient Greek polis or state. These educational ideals later spread to the Greco-Roman world at large and were called humanitas in Latin. Paideia was meant to instill aristocratic virtues in the young citizen men who were trained in this way. An ideal man within the polis would be well-rounded, refined in intellect, morals, and physicality, so training of the body and the soul. Sims packs are ripe for the picking, up to 50% off. How you doing, Rouge Light Girl? Alright. Refined in intellect, morals, and physicality, so training of the body, mind, and soul was important. Both practical, subject-based schooling, as well as a focus upon the socialization of individuals within the aristocratic order of the polis, were part of this training. The practical aspects of the paideia included subjects within the modern designation of the liberal arts, e.g. rhetoric, grammar, and philosophy, as well as scientific disciplines like arithmetic and medicine. Gymnastics and wrestling were valued for their effect on the body alongside the moral education, which was imparted by the study of music, poetry, and philosophy. This approach to the rearing of a well-rounded Greek male was common to the Greek-speaking world, with the exception of Sparta, where agoge was practiced. I know what that is, I just don't know how to pronounce it. The idea of paideia in ancient and modern cultures. Greeks considered paideia to be carried out by the aristocratic class, who tended to intellectualize their culture and their ideas. The culture and the youth were formed to the ideal kalos kaganthos, beautiful and good. Aristotle gives his paideia proposal in Book 8 of the Politics. In this he says that education ought to be adapted to the particular form of constitution, since the particular character belonging to each constitution both guards the constitution generally and originally establishes it. As a result, Aristotle argues that education should be a public system, not left up to individuals. He goes on to deliberate about what a proper education should entail, weighing different subjects, such as music and drawing, against their benefit towards cultivating virtue. He lists the ways he believes that gymnastic training should be carried out, bringing up some Spartan practices in order to see the benefits and drawbacks of their system. He talks extensively about music and its place in education, ultimately concluding that it should be included, but that there should be specific instruction in what times and what rhythms they should take part, and also what kinds of instruments should be used in their studies, as this naturally makes a difference. Oh, lovely. I hope you're looking forward. Well, I don't know if anybody's really looking forward to work, but I hope you're feeling refreshed and ready to tackle the week. In modern discourse, the German-American classicist Werner Jaeger wrote Paideia, the Ideals of Greek Culture, using the concept of paideia to trace the development of Greek thought and education from Homer to Demosthenes. Encyclopedist and Aristotelian philosopher Mortimer Adler gives a paideia proposal in his criticism of contemporary Western educational systems. Lawrence A. Kremen did so in his Histories of American Education. Isocrates' influence. Isocrates' paideia was quite influential, particularly in Athens. Isocrates' goal was to construct a practice of education and politics that brought validity in the democratic deliberative practice while remaining intellectually respectable. Isocrates sought to encourage a love of wisdom in his audience by making them apply a principle of intellectual consistency to their lives. The fundamental aspect of his paideia was consistency on the individual, civic, and pan-Hellenic levels. Good to hear. At the heart of any Greek child's education is the concept of paideia, the education of the child in the laws, social matters, and morality to become an ideal member of society. In striving for this ideal state, the best is encouraged and sought in all aspects of life, the arts, the body, and the mind. Alexander seeks her wisdom on how to improve himself. What advice shall you give? Know thyself for extra wisdom, nothing in excess, extra discipline, which would probably help me with help me with the money, to be honest, or the good is hard to do. Let's do nothing in excess. All right, this is a little wasteful in terms of orders, but I do want to get that out of the way. So let's focus on our target, but we are going to need to shore up my defenses, so we're going to poke them with sharp sticks. Okay, can't go in there. Looks like I'm paying. Ooh, nice. I didn't exactly want to make them a guard, but okay, gotta force march them again. It's a start. Doesn't let me get any closer. All right. That does put a fly in the ointment. Let's not worry about the boats quite yet. This is just downright awkward, but oh, that's a thing of beauty. So I don't mind paying for a few more orders here. Recent assaults on Ambracia have resulted in crowds of prisoners, a few of whom are native Macedonians. One of these captives is a former Macedonian military student jailed for suspected spying. Install her as an officer in Dodona, or bring her to the court to advise. Ooh. Let's get an advisor. A new court soldier, Diademia, has joined the court. Her expertise in matters of war will help keep Macedonia safe. It is a really wonderful soundtrack, also, and I'm glad you like it. Oh man, we're really getting lucky with the crits. I am running out of training. Yeah, I'm gonna show some restraint here. Okay, gardener's taken care of. We don't have a stronghold yet, so... I'm actually tempted to make a bireme in this case, because our navy is severely lacking. Like a Medea, tough call. I do think we're probably going to want to replenish our forces. But do I have... I don't really have my stonecutters yet, so... We're going to get those settled. Philippi. I think I said I was going to get a woodcutter there. Ephesus. We've made the settler. We've already got a worker... treasury for sure. Alright, let's see what the cost is for us. Okay. Fair enough. I could have moved them to a more protected position. I really was not paying attention. The AI is certainly playing for keeps. After a recent wound, General Craterus of Pella is now most impressively scarred. Governor Cleanthes of Apollonia is likely to fly into a rage if he does not get his way, a most spoiled person, and we've rallied the military, resulting in higher morale and discipline. Dinner with a rival. So this is one of these examples of a link. We've read this a couple of times before, but this is a link that isn't a Wikipedia link, so... Ancient history, smooth talk, and unimaginable violence. A dinner date with Scipio Africanus and Hannibal. In 193 BC, the Roman general Scipio Africanus, the subduer of Carthage due to his victory at the Battle of Zama after a period outside of the Roman political spotlight, was part of a delegation sent to help settle a dispute that was brewing with Antiochus III of Syria. 7 years after the Battle of Zama saw Roman power finally destroy Carthage in the Second Punic War. Hannibal Barca, the great terror of Rome, went into voluntary exile after the Romans requested his surrender, seeing Carthaginian power growing again under his leadership. Traveling the Mediterranean in 193 BC, he ended up at the court of Antiochus III, preparing for war with Rome, and offered his help in his war. Livy, in his Ab Urbe Condita, writes of a legendary meeting between these two great and influential men at the court of Antiochus III and the conversation that followed. When Africanus asked who, in Hannibal's opinion, was the greatest general, Hannibal named Alexander, the king of the Macedonians, because with a small force he had routed armies innumerable, and because he had traversed the most distant regions. Even to see which transcended human hopes. To the next request as to whom he would rank second, Hannibal selected Pyrrhus, saying that he had been the first to teach the art of castration. Besides, no one had chosen his ground or placed his troops more discriminately. He possessed also the art of winning men over to him, so that the Italian people preferred the lordship of a foreign king to that of the Roman people, so long the master in that land. When he continued, asking whom Hannibal considered third, he named himself without hesitation. It's fairly safe to say that Scipio was angling for a compliment of his own military acumen from a man he had beaten in war, and also to have a little dig at Hannibal, no doubt. But let us analyze the three men that Hannibal chose as the greatest generals. Alexander the Great is, without doubt, one of the greatest generals and king the world has ever seen. In the space of a decade, Alexander conquered the Persian Empire, destroying great armies with his Macedonian forces, traveled as far as into the Hindu Kush, and it was only a mutiny of his men that saw him turn back. His slowly emerging empire saw the homogenization of Greek and Persian ideals, and it was only his sudden illness and death in 323 BC that saw his plans fail. Pyrrhus was an enemy of early Rome. King of Epirus, Pyrrhus was persuaded to aid the Italian Tarentines in their struggle against the Romans. In 280 BC, he landed in Italy with the intention of aiding the city of Tarentum, and no doubt carving out his own little empire on Italian soil too. Pyrrhus won many victories over the armies of Rome, and his placing and positioning of military camps is often cited as the first example of tactical placement. But he lost so many of his own men in the battles that he had to withdraw from Italy, causing it to be named a Pyrrhic victory. If we are victorious in one more battle with the Romans, we shall be utterly ruined. Plutarch, Life of Pyrrhus. Finally, Hannibal named himself. The scourge of Rome for many years, Hannibal had crossed the Alps, defeated the Romans in 3 stunning battles at Trebia, Trasimene, and Cannae, and came the closest anyone has ever come to destroying Roman power. It was only Rome's complete refusal to surrender and repeated raising of new armies that wore down Hannibal's power in Italy. There's little to argue with Hannibal and his choices. Alexander the Great was universally recognized throughout the Greek and Roman world as the pinnacle of what it meant to be a general, conqueror, and great man. Roman emperors of the 1st century AD, like Augustus and Gaius Caligula, were still trying to link themselves with him. His choice of Pyrrhus is no doubt due to his developing the tactical art of the placement of military camps and troops, something which Hannibal learnt from himself in his own wars with Rome. Pyrrhus might have eventually lost against Rome, but he laid the groundwork for future military tacticians. Hannibal's own achievements in warfare are well known, no more so than his great victory at Cannae with his clever tactics, to almost completely wipe out the Roman legions. Hannibal's choice for himself for the final slot led Scipio to break into a laugh. "What would you say if you had defeated me?" "Then beyond doubt," he replied, "I should place myself before Alexander and before Pyrrhus and before all other generals." Flattery will get you everywhere, it seems, and it is reported that Scipio was stirred deeply, as Hannibal had segregated him from all other commanders as one beyond estimation. Of course, if you actually analyze what Hannibal says, he is still backhandedly complimenting Scipio. In a nuanced sentence, Hannibal recognizes the fact that Scipio is the man that defeated him at Carthage, but still doesn't fully accept it outright as ranking as great as his own achievements. Opposing generals meeting to trade barbs is rare, especially when it is 2 generals of Scipio's and Hannibal's stature. In a war that spanned the Mediterranean and saw Carthage within reach of destroying Roman power before their own eventual demise, it is nice to think that at the end of it, Hannibal, with his little witticism, won the final blow in the long and bloody Second Punic War for his city, Carthage. Thanks for reading, James. A delegation from Sparta is sent to help settle a minor dispute that is brewing between your 2 nations. At dinner, one of their party speculates on who would beat the gods in war, leading to a spirited debate. They put forward Queen Consort Archidamia the Younger as the best candidate. Who do you choose? I could say, I agree, she's the most superior general, or let's be realistic. Everyone knows that our own General Seleucus, the soldier, is unbeatable. Origin of the State. We're getting lots of these. Origines is the title of a lost work on Roman and Italian history by Cato the Elder, composed in this early 2nd century BC. According to Cato's biographer, Cornelius Nepos, the original Nepo baby, the Origins consisted of 7 books. Book 1 was the history of the founding and the kings of Rome. Books 2 and 3 covered the origins of major Italian cities and gave the work its title. The last 4 books dealt with the Roman Republic, its wars, and its growing power, focused on the period between the onset of the First Punic War up to 149 BC. When Cato wrote, there had been 4 major works devoted to Roman history. Navius and Ennius had written in Latin verse, and Fabius Pictor and Alimentius had written in Greek prose. The two poetic works closely tied the history of Rome to its gods. The two prose works apparently hewed closely to the annals of the Pontifex Maximus. Feeling no need to follow precedent, Roman or otherwise, Cato declared, "I do not care to copy what is on the high priest's tablet, how many times grain became dear, how many times the sun or moon were obscured or eclipsed." In his books on the Italian cities, Cato apparently treated each individually and drew upon their local traditions. The latter books include at least two of Cato's political orations verbatim, something thought to have been unique in ancient historiography. The first was his oration to the Roman Senate against declaring war on Rhodes in 167 BC. The other was his oration to the Senate supporting legislation to establish a special court of inquiry regarding Sulpicius Galba's treatment of the Listriani. Although he avoided mentioning military commanders by name, the work's surviving fragments suggest that he also focused a great deal of attention on his own campaigns as a general. History. The Origins is a lost work with no complete text surviving to the modern day. Its fragments in other works have been collected and translated. Influence. Ancient authors considered the Origins to have influenced the style of Sallust. Quintilian cites an anonymous epigram that calls him the great thief of the works of old Cato. Festus felt that the last four books on Rome's rising power outweighed the rest, but later Roman historians largely disregarded the Origins because it eschewed consular dating, and highlighted his own political career so heavily, though Livy pointedly remarked that Cato was a man to minimize his own achievements. His near contemporary, Dionysius of Halicarnassus, cites Cato's first three books in his history, calling Cato among the most learned of the Roman historians. In the present day, the Origins is considered to be the beginning of proper historiography in Latin, and considered to have been an important work in the development of Latin literature. Cato, the great thinker and politician in Tharissa, comes forward with a text chronicling the story of Macedonia. His account includes all of the major events in the nation's history, both inspiring and tragic, and spares no one in its critical assessment. Should we make this document available to all, or should we prohibit its distribution to protect the state? So we can make the document available to all and gain culture, or bury the document to protect those involved. As nice as it would be to get boosts to the families, let's go for the culture. We'll also rally the troops. At this point, I think I just want to found a city rather than worry about the ideal placement. There's Byzantium. All of the workers are idle right now, but again, we're at war, so we need to focus on what matters. Now, if I play my cards right, everybody can get out of this alive. I was hoping for a little more. These are a rental anyway, so I don't need to worry too much about them. Okay. Ooh, that's a nice crit. Again, it's really hard to turn down taking out troops at this point. But we are gonna... The remainder is gonna be arrows on Thermopylae. I'm curious to see what the relative strength... Yeah, it still says similar strength. I still need to pay up. You're kidding me. This one's a pretty critical one for us to beat because that's going to bring us 3 new units to bring into Delphi. Like, we've pretty much ground to a halt. We have sort of some weight in terms of the troops, but we're definitely coming up short in terms of actually delivering some wins. So I think for Dodona, I think at this point we need to start getting some replacements. I will make biremes where I can. This one, treasury first. Then a worker. Teresa, treasury always. All right, let's see how this goes. Ah, that's what what are they doing here? They're going for the high quality spear units. So we kind of knew that we would be losing some units here. This isn't fatal yet. I am going to want to be a little more careful with my units moving forward, though. Oh man, I was not expecting a follow-up like that. The Fallen Banner. After the fighting is done, the few survivors under Queen Consort Odata slink back to the capital. They bring back reports that their banner was lost in the battle despite Odata surviving. Queen Consort Eurydice, the commander, is strict even for a general and demands that Odata should be publicly denounced for letting their banner fall. But the defeated leader was carried from the battle after an early arrow pierced her armor. Either berate her or encourage her that she will have a chance to redeem herself. Eurydice, yeah, I can handle her getting disappointed. In an act of solidarity, citizens of Trapezus are volunteering in droves. They wish to show their local pride. Engage in hard labor. Nope. We need bodies. It's unlimbered. Are they really going to go after the... I wonder. Not sure this is the smartest move for this unit, but... that's disappointing. I don't have anybody who can seal the deal, so... I think it might be time to worry about a few of these units. I don't think the ship's going to do anything here. Alright. We're out of citizens, so I think at this point, probably we're throwing as many units at our problems as we can get. We're going to skip workers for now. Yeah, we're in some trouble if this is what's happening with my army. Although apparently we still count as similar armies. I have a feeling they're going to take out quite a few of mine, though. If there's one thing that's true about the old world AI... Oh, thanks for sharing that, Ria. One thing that's for sure, the AI in this game plays for keeps, and they've got some really heavy anti-infantry, plus whatever else is in the region. That might be Philip's unit. Like I said, plays for keeps. So I'm thinking at this point we need to start committing archers to taking out infantry units. A ceasefire tragedy. A lone soldier returns from recent fighting, battered and bloody. The haunted look in his eyes speaks of the tragedy before his mouth even opens. After days of fightings, the troops under Lysimachus's command were at the breaking point. Finally, Lysimachus agreed to meet with the Athenian leader, taking a small cohort of officers and guards into the enemy camp. They never had a chance to talk. A young Alduian officer in training, spooked by the idea of a trap, grabbed the bridle of Lysimachus's horse in a sudden movement. The ensuing massacre was swift and violent, with only one soldier alive left to tell the tale. Upon hearing the news, the devastated Argead blamed the Aludaian boy for the death of Lysimachus. How do you intervene? Marcus Licinius Crassus. Some of you might know this story. Syrian governorship and death. Crassus received Syria as his province, which promised to be... Actually, you know what? Crassus is kind of an interesting figure, so this is going to be a longer one, but I think it's worth it. So, Marcus Licinius Crassus was a Roman general and statesman who played a key role in the transformation of the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire. He is often called the richest man in Rome. Crassus began his public career as a military commander under Lucius Cornelius Sulla during his civil war. Following Sulla's assumption of the dictatorship, Crassus amassed an enormous fortune and of property through property speculation. Crassus rose to political prominence following his victory over the slave revolt led by Spartacus, sharing the consulship with his rival Pompey the Great. A political and financial patron of Julius Caesar, Crassus joined Caesar and Pompey in the unofficial political alliance known as the First Triumvirate. Together, the three men dominated the Roman political system, but the alliance did not last long due to the ambitions, egos, and jealousies of the three men. While Caesar and Crassus were lifelong allies, Crassus and Pompey disliked each other, and Pompey grew increasingly envious of Caesar's spectacular successes in the Gallic Wars. The alliance was restabilized at the Lucca Conference in 56 BC, after which Crassus and Pompey again served jointly as consuls. Following his second consulship, Crassus was appointed as the governor of Roman Syria. Crassus used Syria as the launchpad for a military campaign against the Parthian Empire. Incidentally, the Parthians are where we get the term parting shot from. Rome's longtime eastern enemy, Crassus's campaign was a disastrous failure, ending in his defeat and death at the Battle of Carrhae. Crassus' death permanently unraveled the alliance between Caesar and Pompey, since his political influence and wealth had been a counterbalance to the two great militarists. Within 4 years of Crassus' death, Caesar crossed the Rubicon and began a civil war against Pompey and the Optimates. Family and background. Marcus Licinius Crassus was a member of the gens Licinia, an old and highly respected plebeian family in Rome. He was the second of 3 sons born to the eminent senator and vir triumphalis Publius Licinius Crassus, consul 95 BC, censor 89 BC. This line was not descended from the wealthy Crassi Divides, although often assumed to be. The elder brother Publius, born circa 116 BC, died shortly after the Italic War, and Crassus' father and younger brother were either slain or took their own lives in Rome in winter 87 to 86 BC, when being hunted down by supporters of Gaius Marius following their victory at Bellum Octavianum. Crassus had the unusual distinction of marrying his wife Tertulla after she had been widowed by his brother. There were 3 main branches of the house of the Licini Crassi in the 2nd and 1st centuries BC, and many mistakes in identifications and lines have arisen owing to the uniformity of Roman nomenclature, erroneous modern suppositions, and the unevenness of information across the generations. In addition, the dives cognomen of the Crassi Divides means rich or wealthy, and since Marcus Crassus, the subject here, was renowned for his enormous wealth, this has contributed to hasty assumptions that the family belonged to the Divides, but no ancient source accords him or his father the divis cognomen. Plutarch says that his great wealth was acquired rather than inherited, and that he was raised in modest circumstances. Crassus's grandfather of the same name, Marcus Licinius Crassus, praetor 126 BC, was facetiously given the Greek nickname Aegilastus, the unlaughing or grim, by his contemporary Gaius Lucilius, the Publius Licinius Crassus. The inventor of Roman satire, who asserted that he smiled once in his whole life. This grandfather was the son of Publius Licinius Crassus. The latter's brother, Gaius Licinius Crassus, consul 168 BC, produced the 3rd line of Licini Crassi of the period, the most famous of whom was Lucius Licinius Crassus, the greatest Roman orator before Cicero and the latter's childhood hero and model. Marcus Crassus was also a talented orator and one of the most energetic and active advocates of his time. Youth and the First Civil War. After the Marian purges and the subsequent death of Gaius Marius, the surviving consul Lucius Cornelius Cinna, father-in-law of Julius Caesar, imposed prescriptions on those surviving Roman senators and equestrians who had supported Lucius Cornelius Sulla in his 88th march on Rome and overthrow of the traditional Roman political arrangements. Cinna's prescription forced Crassus to flee to Hispania. He stayed in Spain from 87 to 84 BC. Here he recruited 2,500 men, an understrength legion, from his father's clients settled in the area. Crassus used his army to extort money from the local cities to pay for his campaigns, even being accused of sacking Malacca. After Cinna's death in 84 BC, Crassus went to the Roman province of Africa and joined Metellus Pius, one of Sulla's closest allies, but did not stay there long because of disagreements with Metellus. He sailed his army to Greece and joined Sulla, with whom he stood in a position of special honor. During Sulla's civil war, Crassus and Pompey fought a battle in the plain of Spoletum. Spoleto killed about 3,000 of the men of Priapus Carbo, the leader of the Marian forces, and besieged Carinus, a Marian commander. During the decisive battle of the Colline Gate, Crassus commanded the right flank of Sulla's army. After almost a day of fighting, the battle was going poorly for Sulla. His own center was being pushed back and was on the verge of collapse when he got word from Crassus that he had comprehensively crushed the enemy before him. Crassus wanted to know whether Sulla needed assistance or whether his men could retire. Sulla told him to advance on the enemy's center and use the news of Crassus's success to stiffen the resolve of his own troops. By the following morning, the battle was over, and the Sullan army emerged victorious, making Sulla the master of Rome. Sulla's victory and Crassus's contribution to it put Crassus in a key position. Sulla was as loyal to his allies as he was cruel towards his enemies, and Crassus had been a very loyal ally. Rise to power and wealth. Marcus Licinius Crassus's next concern was to rebuild the fortunes of his family, which had been confiscated during the Marian-Cinnan proscriptions. Sulla's proscriptions, in which the property of his victims was cheaply auctioned off, found one of the greatest acquirers of this type of property in Crassus. Indeed, Sulla was especially supportive of this because he wished to spread the blame as much as possible among those unscrupulous enough to do so. And I'm sorry, I just lost my audio. It should be okay for you, but just give me a quick second here while I bring that back. Sulla's prescriptions ensured that his survivors would recoup their lost fortunes from the fortunes of wealthy adherents to Gaius Marius or Lucius Cornelius Cinna. Prescriptions meant that their political enemies lost their fortunes and their lives, that their female relatives, notably widows and widowed daughters, were forbidden to marry, remarry, or remain married, and that in some cases their families' hopes of rebuilding their fortunes and political significance were destroyed. Crassus is said to have made part of his money from prescriptions, notably the prescription of one man whose name was not initially on the list of those prescribed, but was added by Crassus, who coveted the man's fortune. Crassus's wealth is estimated by Pliny at approximately 200 million sesterces. Plutarch, in his Life of Crassus, says that the wealth of Crassus increased from less than 300 talents at first to 7,100 talents. This represented 229 tons of silver, worth about 167.4 million at August 2023 silver prices, accounted right before his Parthian expedition, most of which Plutarch declares Crassus got by fire and war, making the public calamities his greatest source of revenue. Some of Crassus's wealth was acquired conventionally through slave trafficking, production from silver mines, and speculative real estate purchases. Crassus brought property that was confiscated in prescriptions by notoriously purchasing burnt and collapsing buildings. Plutarch wrote that observing how frequent such occurrences were, he bought slaves who were architects and builders. When he had over 500 slaves, he bought houses that had burnt and adjacent ones because their owners would let it go at a trifling price. He bought the largest part of Rome in this way, buying them on the cheap and rebuilding them with slave labor. First ever Roman fire brigade was created by Crassus. Fires were almost a daily occurrence in Rome, and Crassus took advantage of the fact that Rome had no fire department by creating his own brigade, 500 men strong, which rushed to burning buildings at the first cry of alarm. Upon arriving at the scene, however, the firefighters did nothing, while Crassus offered to buy the burning building from the distressed property owner at a miserable price. If the owner agreed to sell the property, the men would put out the fire. If the owner refused, then they would simply let the structure burn to the ground. After buying many properties this way, he rebuilt them and often leased the properties to their original owners or the new tenants. This guy is the ultimate troll. Crassus befriended Licinia, a Vestal virgin whose valuable property he coveted. Plutarch says, and yet, when he was further on in years, he was accused of criminal intimacy with Licinia, one of the Vestal virgins, and Licinia was formally prosecuted by a certain Plautius. Now, Licinia was the owner of a pleasant villa in the suburbs, which Crassus wished to get at a low price, and it was for this reason that he was forever hovering about the woman and paying his court to her, until he fell under the abominable suspicion. And in a way, it was his avarice that absolved him from the charge of corrupting the Vestal, and he was acquitted by the judges, but he did not let Licinia go until he had acquired her property. Despite his great wealth, Crassus is said to have avoided excess and luxury at home. Family meals were simple, and entertaining was generous but not ostentatious. Crassus chose his companions during leisure hours on the basis of personal friendship as well as political utility. Although the Crassi, as noble plebeians, would have displayed ancestral images in their atrium, they did not lay claim to a fictionalized genealogy that presumed divine or legendary ancestors, a practice not uncommon among the Roman nobility. After rebuilding his fortune, Crassus's next concern was his political career. As a wealthy man in Rome, an adherent of Sulla, and a man who hailed from a line of consuls and praetors, Crassus' political future was apparently assured. His problem was that, despite his military successes, he was eclipsed by his contemporary Pompey the Great. Crassus' rivalry with Pompey and his envy of Pompey's triumph would influence his subsequent career. Crassus and Spartacus. Crassus was elected praetor in 73 BC and pursued the cursus honorum. During the Third Servile War, or Spartacus's revolt, Crassus offered to equip, train, and lead new troops at his own expense. After several legions had been defeated and their commanders killed in battle, Crassus was sent into battle against Spartacus by the Senate. At first, he had trouble both in anticipating Spartacus's moves and in inspiring his army to strengthen their morale. When a segment of his army fled from battle, abandoning their weapons, Crassus revived the ancient practice of decimation, i.e. executing 1 out of every 10 men, with the victims selected by drawing lots. Plutarch reports that many things horrible and dreadful to see occurred during the infliction of punishment, which was witnessed by the rest of Crassus's army. Nevertheless, according to Appian, the troops' fighting spirit improved dramatically thereafter, since Crassus had demonstrated that he was more dangerous to them than the enemy. Afterwards, when Spartacus retreated to the Bruttium Peninsula in southwest of Italy, Crassus tried to pen up the slave armies by building a ditch and a rampart across the peninsula of Rhegium and Bruttium from sea to sea. Despite this remarkable feat, Spartacus and part of his army still managed to break out. On the night of a heavy snowstorm, they sneaked through Crassus's lines and made a bridge of dirt and tree branches over the ditch, thus escaping. Sometime later, when Roman armies led by Pompey and Vero Lucilius were recalled to Italy in support of Crassus, Spartacus decided to fight rather than find himself and his followers trapped between 3 armies, 2 of them returning from overseas action. In this last battle, the Battle of the Salaris River, Crassus gained a decisive victory and captured 6,000 slaves alive. During the fighting, Spartacus attempted to personally kill Crassus, slaughtering his way towards the general's position, but he succeeded only in killing 2 of the centurions guarding Crassus. Spartacus himself is believed to have been killed in the battle, although his body was never recovered. The 6,000 captured slaves were crucified along the Via Appia by Crassus's orders. At his command, the bodies were not taken down afterwards, but remained rotting along Rome's principal route to the south. This was intended as an abject lesson to anyone who might think of rebelling against Rome in the future, particularly of slave insurrections against their owners and masters, the Roman citizens. Crassus effectively ended the Third Servile War in 71 BC. In Plutarch's account, Crassus had written to the Senate that they must summon Lucilius from Thrace and Pompey from Spain, but he was sorry now that he had done so and was eager to bring the war to an end before those generals came. He knew that success would be ascribed to the one who came up with the assistance and not to himself. He decided to attack a splinter group of rebels, and after this Spartacus withdrew to the mountains. Pompey had arrived from Hispania and his veterans and sent to provide reinforcements. Crassus hurried to seek the final battle, which he won. Pompey arrived in time to deal with the disorganized and defeated fugitives, writing to the Senate that indeed Crassus had conquered the slaves, but that he himself had extirpated the war. Crassus, for all his self-approval, did not venture to ask for a major triumph, and it was thought ignoble and mean in him to celebrate even the minor triumph on foot, called the ovation, nor did he wish to be honored for subduing slaves. In Plutarch's account, Pompey was asked to stand for the consulship. Crassus wanted to become his colleague and asked Pompey for assistance. As said in the Life of Crassus, Pompey received his request gladly, for he was desirous of having Crassus, in some way or another, always in debt to him for some favor. Eagerly promoted his candidature and finally said in a speech to the assembly that he should be no less grateful to them for the colleague than for the office which he desired. However, in office, they did not remain friendly. They differed on almost every measure, and by their contentiousness rendered their consulship barren politically and without achievement. Crassus displayed his wealth by realizing public sacrifices to Hercules, entertaining the populace at 10,000 tables and distributing sufficient grain to last each family 3 months, an act that had the additional ends of performing a previously made religious vow of a tithe to the demigod Hercules and to gain support among members of the popular party. In Appian's account, when Crassus ended the rebellion, there was a contention over honors between him and Pompey. Neither men dismissed their armies, with both being candidates for the consulship. Crassus had been praetor as the law of Sulla required. Pompey had been neither praetor nor quaestor, and was only 34 years old, but he had promised the plebeian tribunes to restore much of their power that had been taken away by Sulla's constitutional reforms. Even when they were both chosen consuls, they did not dismiss their armies stationed near the city. Pompey said that he was awaiting for the return of Metellus for his Spanish triumph. Crassus said that Pompey ought to dismiss his army first. In the end, Crassus yielded first, offering Pompey his hand. The first triumvirate alliance with Pompey and Caesar. In 65 BC, Crassus was elected censor with another conservative, Quintus Lutatius Catullus Capitolinus, himself son of the consul. During that decade, Crassus was Julius Caesar's patron in all but name, financing Caesar's successful election to become Pontifex Maximus. Caesar had formerly been the priest of Jupiter, or the Flamen Dialis, but had been deprived of the office by Sulla. Crassus also supported Caesar's efforts to win command of military campaigns. Caesar's mediation between Crassus and Pompey led to the creation of the first triumvirate in 60 BC, consisting of Crassus, Pompey, and Caesar, who became consul in 59 BC. The coalition would last until Crassus's death. In 54 BC, Crassus looted the Jewish temple treasury. In 55 BC, the triumvirate met at the Lucca Conference in 56 BC. Crassus was again consul with Pompey, and a law was passed assigning the provinces of the two Hispanias and Syria to Pompey and Crassus, respectively, for 5 years. Syrian governorship and death. Now, this is the thing that Old World linked us to. Crassus received Syria as his... also, Game of Thrones fans will probably recognize this. Crassus received Syria as his province, which promised to be an inexhaustible source of wealth. It might have been, had he not also sought military glory and crossed the Euphrates in an attempt to conquer Parthia. Crassus attacked Parthia not only because of its great source of riches, but because of a desire to match the military victories of Pompey and Caesar. The king of Armenia, Artavasdes II, offered Crassus the aid of nearly 40,000 troops, 10,000 cataphracts, and 30,000 infantrymen, on the condition that Crassus invade through Armenia so that the king could not only maintain the upkeep of his own troops, but also provide a safer route for his men and Crassus. Crassus refused and chose the more direct route by crossing the Euphrates, as he had done in his successful campaign in the previous year. Crassus received directions from the Osroene chieftain Armenes, who had previously assisted Pompey in his eastern campaigns. Armenes was in the pay of the Parthians and urged Crassus to attack at once, falsely stating that the Parthians were weak and disorganized. He then led Crassus's army into a desolate desert far from any water. In 53 BC, at the Battle of Carrhae, in modern Iran and Turkey, Crassus's legions were defeated by a numerically inferior Parthian force. Crassus's legions were primarily heavy infantry, but were not prepared for the type of swift cavalry and arrow attack in which the Parthian troops were particularly adept. The Parthian horse archers devastated the unprepared Romans with hit-and-run techniques and feigned retreats with the ability to shoot backwards as well as they could forwards. So this is the origin of the term parting shot, the Parthian shot. Crassus refused his quaestor Gaius Cassius Longinus's plan to reconstitute the Roman battle line and remained in the testudo formation to protect his flanks until the Parthians eventually ran out of arrows. Siri just says, something went wrong. However, the Parthians had stationed camels carrying arrows to allow their archers to continually reload and relentlessly barrage the Romans until dusk. Despite taking severe casualties, the Romans successfully retreated to Carrhae, forcing to leave many wounded behind to be later slaughtered by the Parthians. Subsequently, Crassus's men, being near mutiny, demanded he parley with the Parthians, who had offered to meet with him. Crassus, despondent at the death of his son Publius in the battle, finally agreed to meet the Parthian general Serena. However, when Crassus mounted his horse to ride to the Parthian camp for a peace negotiation, his junior officer Octavius suspected a Parthian trap and grabbed Crassus's horse by the bridle, instigating a sudden fight with the Parthians that left the Roman party dead, including Crassus. A story later emerged to the effect that after Crassus's death, the Parthians poured molten gold into his mouth in a symbolic mockery of his thirst for wealth. The account given in Plutarch's biography of Crassus also mentions that during the feasting and revelry in the wedding ceremony of Artavasdes' sister to the Parthian king, Orodes II's son and heir Pacorus, in the Armenian capital of Artashat, Crassus's head was brought to Orodes II. Both kings were enjoying a performance of Euripides' Greek tragedy The Bacchae, when a certain actor of the royal court named Jason of Tralles took the head and sang the following verses, also from the Bacchae. We bring from the mountain a tendril fresh cut to the palace, a wonderful prey. Crassus's head was thus used in place of a prop head representing Pentheus and carried by the character of Agave. Also, according to Plutarch, a final mockery was made ridiculing the memory of Crassus by dressing up a Roman prisoner, Caius Pacanus, who resembled him in appearance in women's clothing, calling him Crassus and Imperator, and leading him in a spectacular show of a final mock triumphal procession, putting to ridiculous use the traditional symbols of Roman triumph and, authority. Video game representations? Why not? Crassus, along with Pelene, is one of the two narrators. Crassus appears as one of the villains in Spartan Total Warrior. Crassus makes an appearance as a great merchant in Sid Meier's Civilization 5 and Sid Meier's Civilization 6, and Crassus appears as one of the hero centurions in some of the campaign missions in Praetorians. He would later be killed in the campaign mission depicting the Battle of Carrhae. Hopefully that was interesting to folks. I think it was worth reading the whole article, but I realized that was a long one. How are the families? Symmachus was a fool for trusting them. Ready for command, Prince Alexander has completed his formal military training. Instructors and other students alike have become convinced that Alexander is indeed a descendant of Achilles, as the skills he displayed in training are beyond what anyone has exhibited in centuries. He has defeated every other trainee at wrestling, boxing, and spear combat. It is time to put Alexander's skills to use on the battlefield. He is now ready to lead troops in combat as a general and only awaits your assignment. Alexander is ready for war. Okay, what on earth am I going to do with this clown show that's developing here? Oh, you're kidding me. It's got one of those, we have to like pound him down before... The duel is close to call. Demetrius and Seleucus exchange blows, neither willing to back down. Suddenly an opening appears, and Seleucus swings his weapon upwards into the underside of Demetrius' outstretched arm. The connection with flesh brings forth a cry of pain, but Demetrius is not down. He charges forward with a cry and swings wildly. Seleucus calmly blocks the attack and strikes at Demetrius' leg with precise and professional movements. He drops to the floor, finally defeated. Victory is yours should Seleucus kill Demetrius or spare his life. Give him a clean death. Alright, that will wipe out those units. Unfortunately, that also means that this mace unit is still up and running. Well, choices have consequences, so... none of this will end well for me. God, how do I even handle this? I think at this point everybody's gotta make units. We're running out. Good lord. All right. So I'm forced to do stuff with my units now. Okay, windmill will hopefully give me some money. Generally right idea, but here we need the barracks. Now this I'm okay with a stronghold. I should do stronghold first. And you can get a third quarry. Have a lovely evening, Oswin Meow. And TD3T. Yes, let me just save you the search. And if you're looking for the source material, I'm pretty sure most of the references for this one came from Plutarch. No problem. Okay. What am I going to do here? I think we'll just end the season. Now, I'm a little worried. I may actually have to reload the save because I think I'm just going to wind up overwhelmed by the Athenians. Yeah, so at this point, like, we just don't have an infantry left. It does feel bad to give up so much of the build-up that we did, but there's a couple of things I did poorly in terms of setup. But I'm wondering if we can interrupt the ships. Yeah, actually, you know what? As fun as it would be to try to work my way out of this, I think I don't have that much more time left today, so I'm going to try and head back. So there's one thing to be said for like more bodies. That won't hurt, but I also just need to have a little more control over the pace of the battle. So like this is what I started with, right? This is not nothing. But part of this is just about how I use it as much as it is actually, the one thing I am curious about is whether or not, you know, here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to start the war again under more or less the same conditions. But I do want to see how much the I kind of want to see how much the placement of the ship is going to change things. So the trick here is that there's only one Greek ship that can attack me here, and I get to stun it. And actually, I'm going to do one other thing. Sorry, let's change that around. So these are going to be sort of a buffer to keep my archers alive. Sorry, one more change. Okay, so let's see if that changes the equation at all. And here we're going to go much more aggressively on military units. Well, no, actually, this is the one exception because this will give me more training. Trapezus. Okay, so I'm curious to see what the Athenian response looks like here. Good lord. I think they just took out the onager. Okay, and they get to go complete. So the blockade means absolutely nothing. Excellent student. Let's get him to focus on battles. So I'm going to try and play this out a little bit, but what I will do for next time, now that I have a little bit of a better idea about how this works, I think I'm actually going to set up some defensive positions on these hills next time. But I do get to focus a bit more on the enemy units this time. That probably would have been better for me to put my men with pointy sticks. I don't like what I'm seeing here. Oh. Is this unit I was thinking of?
never want to belong to any club.
TT3T, thank you very much for the follow. I'm sorry I'm not being a little more active in the conversation. And Scuffed Infrabasian. Nice, nice statistical name. So obviously I'm open to attacks here, and there's a little spot where they're going to be able to move in, but their forces are much more concentrated. Thermopylae's at half of its health. I guess the only real catch here is that, actually I'm going to spend quite a bit on this. The real drawback is we lost the Onager, which is going to mean that this is a much harder fight. I'm also paying through the nose for actions, but... I hate you. I think we're just going to have to leave this one, otherwise I'm not going to have any training left. Like I said, this is kind of experimentation time at this point, so... these are the closer cities, so I think probably it makes sense to continue making infantry. It's the the ones that are further away that make me wonder if I should be training something else. But in this case, I'm just going to make more bodies for the... Well, for the most part, more bodies for the front lines. Probably going for a kill. Oof, not only are they going for a kill, but that unit's still free. Mind you, again, we've lost one unit, but we've sort of had quite a bit more luck concentrating the Athenian force and being able to wipe them out, so this is still probably better than most of the situations I found myself in for the last little while. Governor Cleanthes of Apollonia is likely to fly into a rage if he does not get his own way. A most spoiled person. Okay, we did read Origins previously, so we will make the document to all. And again, I apologize for not going into more detail on these ones, but I don't want to be too repetitive. Like I don't mind some repetition. That's inevitable, but I don't want to be too repetitive. Some really nice crits there. Alright, Dodona's gonna get a fancy new ballista. Byreme for Syracuse. Alright, let's deal with these dastardly Athenians. Now, one of the critical moves that I can do here, let's install her as an officer. One of the big ones is if I can break this area, I can get a lot more poking opportunities. This one's got to be a forced march, unfortunately. I think the mace has got to be the thing to die, but I don't think I have the force to make that happen. Well, they've certainly done a good job of drawing me away from Thermopylae. I don't really want to spend that much more on order. The one exception would be rally troops. Okay, yeah. So let's see what the cost for those choices are. I am actually slightly tempted to use one of the onagers to rain hell on these guys. It's getting dicey on the side here. Oof. Okay. General Placinius seeks reassurances. He fears that your recklessness with the lives of his soldiers put them in unnecessary danger. He pleads with you to more carefully consider the consequences when deploying soldiers. Soldiers are no longer his concern, or who dares call this ruler reckless? All right. I am curious to see whether or not I can turn this around. So it's a nice slug of damage that I do here. I think I need to move the elephant out of the way, otherwise it gets hit hard. But I do have some options that open up for me. Out of soldiers. Shape of things to come. Kill a unit with young Alexander. There's an achievement. With young Alexander as a general in Heroes of the Aegean 3. Okay. So what I get to do now with the remaining, with these remaining archers, I can start whittling down some of these other troops. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about the boats. I mean, the other thing I can do is just go on. I can fire on Thermopylae because I know there's going to be. Oh, yeah, send them into battle. This is more just recognizing that they're going to be able to attack them no matter what. So, at the very least, I can get some damage in. So, I mean, again, we're a little bit broken up here, but I think in terms of just being able to take out Athenians, that was not a bad turn for me. How on earth we're going to be able to take this city is a whole other question for me. Okay, again, replenish the front lines. Let's see what comes. Okay, not a huge surprise that they went after the... Actually, I think that might have been Alexander's unit. No. Oof. It's a lot more infantry than I thought I was going to lose. And I have become cruel. And this is the Crassus entry again. Sparta's on the brink of a breakthrough. However, they claim that they need Governor Aristotle the Younger's specialist knowledge of the iridescence of fish scales to complete their work. They claim that if we permit Aristotle to join them and complete the work, then they will share this knowledge once completed. Sparta gets the infantry square off of that. Send your agents to steal the research. Absolutely. All right. So again, I think probably I've bitten off more than I can chew here. Let's see what we can make happen. So I am going to keep the pressure on Thermopylae. What we're going to do here, I want to throw as many things as I can on the tough infantry units. Yeah, we can't move in there. All right. So one of the challenges here is we're going to need to find a way to wipe out this unit. Okay, well. That seems like a job for archers now. So that opens us up to being able to do nasty things to the macemen here. I'm actually wondering if we might be able to get the archers to clean this up. Not quite the way I thought that they would, but not a bad way either. I think there's a really good chance I might lose this unit doing this. It probably makes more sense to actually move one of these units off to the east here. But let's just see. Let's give you a new general. Oh my god, Philip's not on the field. Okay, so Alcibiades so that we can get him healing. Put Philip on that. Rule of wisdom, the people of Larissa come to you, King Philip the Invincible, renowned for foresight and wisdom, to guide Larissa to even greater heights. Larissa must claim more land or must learn to govern itself. Let us claim more land. We're going to ignore the workers for now. All right, let's see what those sneaky Athenians get up to. Good lord, they have endless armies. So we kind of knew that was going to happen. I might be able to get away with something kind of nasty with the elephant. A talent for geometry, Prince Alexander has shown a remarkable aptitude with mathematics and geometry, rapidly mastering the basics. During a visit to the court, Alexander asks for advice on the best path to apply these studies. What guidance shall we supply? Engineers are in short supply at court, carpenters make all things possible, and it is important to have a well-rounded education. Professional army or volunteers, lasting security is bought with gold. None fight like a man protecting his home. Let us say none fight like a man protecting his home. Not long left, you walk the gardens together with Alexander, discussing the future of Macedonia. Once Macedonia controls all of Greece and secures the borders, the time will come to invade Persia by land and by sea, and to end that evil empire once and for all. You expect to be next to Alexander on the front lines, commanding the victorious troops. Passing past a small altar dedicated to Apollo, you inhale the odor of herbs burning in the Thematerion, and the world before your eyes grows distant and dark as you feel an overwhelming divine presence. You hear no words, see no Moira, but you are filled with certainty that your time on this mortal world is drawing to an end. Whatever else you seek to accomplish, you do not have much time left. The strange feeling passes, and Alexander does not seem to have noticed anything. He asks about the best naval routes to invade Persia, and you carry on with the conversation between a current conqueror and a future one. I will not fight my fate, but I will make the most of the time that I have. The scenario ends once Philip dies. His death is getting closer. Free Ballista. Okay, let's see if we can... So I'm assuming at this point... I don't know if the scenario is unwindable, but I'm definitely in a tough spot. So I'm thinking what I might be able to do here. This might actually cause this unit to get stunned. Yep. Okay, cool. And that onager is going to have its own revenge on us soon, so... Not enough on Thermopylae, but again, that's preventing disaster. That's a worthwhile use of forces. Questionable as to why I'm putting Philip right in the thick of it, but he's good at what he does. Alright, This unit's going to need to heal. Could they have possibly put that any further away? 4 season. Let's just move this thing up. I'm boned. I kind of wanted to read that, but I also want to see if I can make a little more progress, so my apologies. So one thing I can try to do, if I'm well and truly out of things to do with my army, we can at least move the settler closer to the target. That's interesting. I don't think there's any way that this thing can escape now. So, I mean, we're back to the original plan with Thermopylae, but I imagine that this is just going to be... this is just them rearming to take out my weakened force. What do I do? You know what? This is a good bit of history, so it's a long one, but 5th century Athens. 5th century Athens is the Greek city-state of Athens in the time from 480 to 404 BC, formerly known as the Golden Age of Athens, the latter part being the Age of Pericles. It was buoyed by political hegemony, economic growth, and cultural flourishing. The period began in 478 BC after the defeat of the Persian invasion, when an Athenian-led coalition of city-states, known as the Delian League, confronted the Persians to keep the liberated Asian Greek cities free. After peace was made with Persia in the mid-5th century BC, what started as an alliance of independent city-states became an Athenian empire after Athens abandoned the pretense of parity among its allies and relocated the Delian League treasury from Delos to Athens, where it funded the building of the Athenian Acropolis, put half of its population on the public payroll, and maintained its position as the dominant naval power in the Greek world. With the empire's funds, military dominance, and its political fortunes guided by statesman and orator Pericles, Athens produced some of its most influential and enduring cultural artifacts of the Western tradition. The playwrights Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides all lived and worked in 5th century BC Athens, as did the historians Herodotus and Thucydides, the physician Hippocrates, and the philosophers Plato and Socrates. Athens' patron goddess was Athena, from whom it derived its name. During the Golden Age, Athenian military and external affairs were mostly entrusted to the 10 generals who were elected each year by 10 tribes of citizens, who could be relied on rather than the valuable quality magistrates chosen by lot under the democracy. These strategoi were given duties which included planning military expeditions, receiving envoys of other states, and directing diplomatic affairs. During the time of the ascendancy of the Ephialtes, as leader of the democratic faction, Pericles was his deputy. When Ephialtes was assassinated for overthrowing the elitist council of the Areopagus, Pericles stepped in and was elected in 445 BC, a post he held continuously until his death in 429 BC, always by election of the Athenian assembly. Pericles was a great speaker. This quality brought him tremendous success in the assembly, presenting his vision of politics. One of his most popular reforms was to allow Thetes, Athenians without wealth, to occupy public office. Another success of his administration was the creation of the Mislephoria, which literally means paid function, a special salary for the citizens that attended the courts as jurors. This way, these citizens were able to dedicate themselves to public service without facing financial hardship. With this system, Pericles suggested in keeping the courts full of jurors, and in giving the people experience in public life. As Athens' ruler, he made the city the first and most important polis of the Greek world, acquiring a resplendent culture and democratic institutions. The sovereign people governed themselves without intermediaries, deciding matters of state in the assembly. Athenian citizens were free and only owed obedience to their laws and respect to their gods. They achieved equality of speech in the assembly. The word of a poor person had the same worth as that as a rich person. The censorial classes did not disappear, but their power was more limited. They shared the fiscal and military offices, but they did not have the power of distributing privileges. The principle of equality granted to all citizens had dangers, since many citizens were incapable of exercising political rights due to their extreme poverty or ignorance. To avoid this, Athenian democracy applied itself to the task of helping the poorest in this manner. Concession of salaries to public functionaries, to seek and supply work to the poor, to grant lands to dispossessed villagers, public assistance for war widows, invalids, orphans, and indigents, and other social help. Most importantly, in order to emphasize the concept of equality and discourage corruption and patronage, practically all public offices that did not require particular expertise were appointed by lot and not election. Among those selected by lot to a political body, specific office was always rotated so that every single member served in all capacities in turn. This was meant to ensure that political functions were instituted in such a way as to run smoothly, regardless of each official's individual capacity. These measures appear to have been carried out in great measure, since the testimony comes to us from, among others, the Greek historian Thucydides, who comments, "Everyone who is capable of serving the city meets no impediment, neither poverty nor civic condition." Institutions. The magistrates. The magistrates were people who occupied a public post and formed the administration of the Athenian state. They were submitted to rigorous public control. The magistrates were chosen by lot using fava beans. Black and white beans were put in a box, and depending on which color the person drew out, they obtained the post or not. This was a way of eliminating the personal influence of rich people and possible intrigues and use of favors. There were only two categories of posts not chosen by lot, but by election in the popular assembly. These were the strategoi, or general, and magistrate of finance. It was generally supposed that significant qualities were needed to exercise each of those two offices. A magistrate's post did not last more than a year, including that of the strategos, in the sense the continued selection of Pericles year after year was an exception. At the end of every year, a magistrate would have to give an account of his administration and use of public finances. The most honored posts were the ancient archontes, or archons in English. In previous ages, they had been heads of the Athenian state, but in the age of Pericles, they lost their influence and power, though they still presided over tribunals. Every year, the citizens elected 10 strategoi, singular strategos, or generals, who served as both military officers and diplomats. It was through this position that Pericles shaped 5th century BC Athens. There was also more than 40 public administration offices and more than 60 to police the streets, the markets, to check weights and measures, and carry out arrests and executions. The assembly of the people. The assembly, in Greek, that is to say, an assembly by summons, was the first organ of the democracy. In theory, it brought together in assembly all the citizens of Athens. However, the maximum number which came to congregate is estimated at 6,000 participants. The gathering place was a space on the hill called Pnyx, in front of the Acropolis. The session sometimes lasted from dawn to dusk. The ecclesia occurred 40 times a year. The assembly decided on laws and decrees which were proposed. Decisions relied on ancient laws that had long been in force. Bills were voted on in 2 stages. First, the assembly itself decided, and afterwards the council, or gave definite approval. The council or boule, well, now they tell me, consisted of 500 members, 50 from each tribe, functioning as an extension of the assembly. These were chosen by chance, using the system described earlier, from which they were familiarly known as councillors of the bean. That would be a great name for a coffee shop. Officially, they were known as the Prytanis, meaning chief or teacher. The council members examined and studied legal projects, supervised the magistrates, and saw that daily administrative details were on the right path. They oversaw the city's external affairs. They also met at Nix Hill, and a place expressly prepared for the event. The 50, I hate that they say this again, Prytanis in power were located on grandstands carved into the rock. They had stone platforms which reached by means of a small staircase of 3 steps. On the first platform, there were secretaries and scribes. The orator would climb up onto the second, and anyone who became unpopular would be kicked out and would be brought to another city. That's quite the shift. On the first platform were the secretaries and scribes. The orator would climb up to the second. Anyone who became unpopular would be kicked out and would be brought to another city. Okay. Finances. The economic resources of the Athenian state would not have been possible without the treasury of the Delian League. The treasury was originally held on the island of Delos, but Pericles moved it to Athens under the pretext that Delos wasn't safe enough. This resulted in internal friction within the League and the rebellion of some city-states that were members. Athens retaliated quickly, and some scholars believe this to be the period wherein it would be more appropriate to discuss an Athenian empire instead of a league. Other small incomes came from customs fees and fines. In times of war, a special tax was levied on rich citizens. These citizens were also charged permanently with other taxes for the good of the city. This is called the system of liturgy. Taxes were used to maintain the triremes, which gave Athens great naval power, and to pay and maintain a chorus for large religious festivals. It is believed that rich Athenian men saw it as an honor to sponsor the triremes, probably because they became leaders of it for the period that they supported it, or the festivals, and they often engaged in competitive donating. Athens also benefited from a proximity to the trading port of Piraeus. The state of Athens collected a duty on cargo passing through the port. At Piraeus, the main port of Athens, this tax was set at 1% or higher on goods. Athens in the age of Pericles. The Athenian elite lived modestly and without great luxuries compared to the elites of other ancient states. There were very few great fortunes, and land ownership was not concentrated. 71 to 73% of the citizen population owned 60 to 65% of the land, whereas the Gini coefficient for citizen population has been calculated at 0.708. The economy was based on maritime commerce and manufacturing, according to Amamea's estimates. Takashi Amamea, by the way, is not originally a classicist. He is actually a very good econometrician. There is a old book of his called Advanced Econometrics, which even like modern texts will still occasionally refer to it for certain points. And he has, I don't know how easy it is to find, but let me just get the title here. If you had to do one econometrics book, I don't know if it would be this one. Wooldridge's is really good. But if you wanted a good, like, supplemental book, he's got a really solid one. And it's got a very different approach from all of the other ones. This one's called Introduction to Statistics and Econometrics. Again, Takashi Amamiya, Takeshiamemiya. I was lucky enough to find this used, so I think it cost me like $20 or whatever, but I believe if you buy it new, $30. I believe if you buy it new, it's kind of expensive, so maybe check your local library, especially if you live in a city with a university. Anyways, yeah, so Amamea, in addition to being a really good econometrician, also does economic study of ancient Greece, and like, it's solid work. It's not just, I do this on my weekends. Like, this is solid research. According to Amamea's estimates, 56% of Athens' GDP was derived from manufacturing. Agriculture was also important, but it did not produce enough to feed the populace. So most food had to be imported. It is estimated that the carrying capacity of Attica's soil was between 84,000 to 150,000, while the population was 300,000 to 350,000 in 431 BC. The state oversaw all major religious festivals. The most important one was the Pantheneia, in honor of the goddess Athena. A ritual procession carried out once a year in May and once every 4 years in July, in which the town presented a new veil, peplos, to the old wooden statue of Athena, Polyada. Phidias immortalized this procession in the frieze of the Parthenon, which is currently at the British Museum. Completely uncontroversially, it really likes being there. In July, Panthea, the Great Panthea, large competitions were organized, which included gymnastics and horseback riding, the winners of which received amphoras full of sacred olive oil as a prize. The other important festival was the dramatic Dionysia, in honor of Dionysus, where tragedies and comedies were performed. Education. The education of boys began in their own home up until the age of 7, when they had to attend school. There they had several teachers who taught them to read and write, as well as subjects such as mathematics and music. Boys also had to take part in physical education classes, where they were prepared for future military service with activities such as wrestling, racing, jumping, and gymnastics. At 18, they served in the army and were instructed how to bear arms. Physical education was very intense, and many of the boys ended up becoming true athletes. In addition to these compulsory lessons, the students had the chance to discuss and learn from the great philosophers, grammarians, and orators of the time. Some poor people had to stay at home and help their parents. However, Aristophanes and Socrates, though they were poor, became famous and successful. Sounds like a bunch of communism. Women. The primary role of free women in classical Athens was to marry and bear children. Happy belated International Women's Day. The emphasis on marriage was a way to perpetuate the family through childbearing, and changed from archaic Athens, when, at least among the powerful, marriages were as much about making beneficial connections as they were about perpetuating the family. Married women were responsible for day-to-day running of the household. At marriage, they assumed responsibility for the prosperity of their husband's household and the health of its members. The primary responsibilities were bearing, raising, and caring for children, weaving cloth, and making clothes. They would also have been responsible for caring for ill household members, supervising slaves, and ensuring that the household had sufficient food. In classical Athenian marriages, husband or wife could legally initiate a divorce. The woman's closest male relative, who would be her kairos if she were not married, could also do so, apparently even against the couple's wishes. After divorce, the husband was required to return the dowry or pay 18% interest annually, so the woman's livelihood would continue and she could remarry. If there were children at the time of the divorce, they remained in their father's house, and he remained responsible for their upbringing. In some cases, Athenian women had the same rights and responsibilities as Athenian men. However, Athenian women did have some significant disabilities at law compared to their male counterparts. Like slaves and medics, they were denied political freedom, citizenship, and voting rights, being excluded from the law courts and the assembly. Women ideally remained apart from men. However, it is recognized that an ideology of separation could not be practiced by many Athenians. In politics, Aristotle asked, how is it possible to prevent the wives of the poor from going out of doors? In practice, only wealthy families would have been able to implement this ideology. Women's responsibilities would have forced them to leave the house frequently, to fetch water from the well or wash clothing, for example. Although wealthy families may have had slaves to enable free women to remain in the house, most would not have had enough slaves to prevent free women from leaving at all. The cult of Athena Polias, the city's eponymous goddess, was central to Athenian society, reinforcing morality and maintaining societal structure. Women played a key role in the cult. The priestesshood of Athena was a position of great importance, and the priestess could use her influence to support political positions. According to Herodotus, before the Battle of Salamis, the priestess of Athena encouraged the evacuation of Athens by telling the Athenians that the snake sacred to Athena, which lived on the Acropolis, had already left. Arts and literature. This is the second to last section. Historians consider the Athenian 5th and 6th centuries BC as the golden age of sculpture and architecture. In this period, the ornamental elements and technique employed did not vary from the previous period. What characterizes this period is the quantity of works and the refinement and perfection of the works. Most were religious in nature, mainly sanctuaries and temples. Some examples from this period are the reconstruction of the temple of Olympian Zeus, reconstruction of the temple of Apollo in Delphi, which was destroyed by an earthquake, the reconstruction of the Acropolis of Athens, the marble city for the glory of the gods, the site having suffered from a fire started by the Persians and lay in ruins for more than 30 years. Pericles initiated its reconstruction with white marble brought from the nearby quarry of Pentelikon. The best architects, sculptors, and workers were gathered to complete the Acropolis. The construction lasted 20 years. Financing came from the Delian League. Sculpture. Phidias is considered the greatest sculptor of this era. He created colossal gold-plated ivory statues. The chrysophantalene statues, generally face and hands, which were highly celebrated and admired in his own time. Athena, situated in the interior of the Parthenon, whose splendor reached the faithful through open doors, and Zeus in his sanctuary of Olympia, considered in its age and later ages to be one of the marvels of the world. I actually wonder, I think I know, yes, okay, there's a fun anecdote about this statue of Zeus, which I'll share in a minute. According to Pliny the Elder's Natural History, in order to conserve the marble of these sculptures, oil receptacles were placed in the temples so that the ivory would not crack. The other great sculptors of this century were Myron and Polycletus. Now, I believe this is the statue of Zeus. This is like the wonder in civilization as well, but there's a fun bit about criticism. I'm wondering if it's in here. Okay. The version I heard of this was more critical. It doesn't sound like it on its own. But yeah, so the idea here, this giant statue of Zeus, you get the idea. The complaint, so the statue occupied half the width of the aisle of the temple built to house it. The geographer Strabo noted early in the 1st century BC that the statue gave the impression that if Zeus arose and stood erect, he would unroof the temple. So the version that I heard of this was essentially somebody complaining. It's like, doesn't this sculptor know what he's doing? He made the statue so huge that if Zeus actually stood up, he'd break the temple. So, I don't know. It's no satisfying some people. Anyways, pottery. During this age, the production of ceramic pieces was abundant. Amphorae were produced in mass quantity due to the heavy trading with other cities all around the Mediterranean. Large evidence of amphorae from this era can be found around every major ancient port, as well as in the Aegean Sea. During this period is also seen an abundance of white background ceramics, which are much more delicate than previously popular yellow and black background ceramics. These ceramics were often used to keep perfume or for mortuary rites, including decorations on graves. It is known that there were many great painters, but their works are lost, both frescoes and freestanding paintings. Theater. The theater reached its greatest height in the 5th century BC. Pericles promoted and favored the theater with a series of practical and economic measures. The wealthiest families were obligated to care for and sustain the choruses and actors. By this means, Pericles maintained the tradition according to which theatrical performances served the moral and intellectual education of the people. Plays were made by men and usually for men, and this platform was often used to reinforce the patriarchy. Athens became the great city of Greek theater. Theatrical performances lasted 8 consecutive hours and were performed as part of a competition in which a jury proclaimed a winner. While the decor of the provisional theaters was very simple, the permanent theatrical venues of ancient Athens eventually became more sumptuous and elaborate. No matter the performance venue, plays were performed by, at most, 3 actors, who wore masks to identify them with the characters they portrayed. They were accompanied by a chorus who sang and danced. The dramatic poets from this era whose plays have survived are Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes. Philosophy. The Golden Age featured some of the most renowned Western philosophers of all time. Chief among these were Socrates, whose ideas exist primarily in a series of dialogues by his student Plato, who mixed them with his own, Plato, and Plato's student Aristotle. Other notable philosophers of the Golden Age included Anaxagoras, Timocrates, who first inquired as to what substance lies within all matter, the earliest known proposal of what is now called the atom, or its subunits. I'm not entirely sure that's right. I think there's a few people who would claim to do this before, but certainly Democritus probably gets credit for being the first atomist. Empedocles, Hippias, Isocrates, Parmenides, Heraclitus, and Protagoras. In the second half of the 5th century BC, the name of sophist, from the Greek sophistes, expert teacher, man of wisdom, was given to the teachers that gave instruction on diverse branches of science and knowledge in exchange for a fee. In this age, Athens was the school of Greece. Pericles and his mistress Aspasia had the opportunity to associate not only with the great Athenian thinkers of their day, but also other Greek and foreign scholars. Among them were the philosopher Anaxagoras, the architect Hippodamus of Miletus, who reconstructed Piraeus, as well as the historians Herodotus and Thucydides and Xenophon. Athens was also the capital of eloquence. Since the late 5th century BC, eloquence had been elevated to an art form. There were the logographers, who wrote courses and created a new literary form characterized by the clarity and purity of the language. It became a lucrative profession. It is known that the logographer Lysias made a great fortune thanks to his profession. Later in the 4th century BC, the orators Isocrates and Demosthenes also became famous. End of the age of Pericles. From 461 until his death in 429, Pericles was active in the government of Athens, an era of splendor and a standard of living higher than any previously experienced. All was well within the internal government, however discontent within the Delian League was ever increasing. Foreign affairs policies adopted by Athens did not produce the best results. Members of the Delian League were increasingly dissatisfied. Athens was the city-state that dominated and subjugated the rest of Greece, and these oppressed citizens wanted their independence. Previously, in 550 BC, a similar league between the cities of the Peloponnesus, directed and dominated by Sparta, had been founded. Taking advantage of the general dissent of the Greek city-states, this Peloponnesian League began to confront Athens. After a long-lasting series of poorly managed hawkish policies and the ensuing Peloponnesian War, the city of Athens finally lost its independence in 338 BC, when Philip II of Macedonia conquered the rest of Greece. Although, in fairness, I'm not entirely sure the conquest of Philip's going to happen here. To celebrate the city's cultural accomplishments, the elders of Eretria have declared this year to be the start of a new golden age. They wish to solicit your cooperation in efforts to further grow their influence. Let's do culture. Simon is your ambassador. Culture. All right. This will probably be the last turn for tonight. So I'm going to take the time to heal. Well, for the most part, I don't want to completely abandon my units here. What a complete pain. All right, let's get these guys where they need to be. Do they have a general yet? Yes. Oh. I think this one was due for Dodona. All right. Well, there's a settler. We're already working on the Byreme too, which is good. So I do need to get some workers going again at some point. Um, Jesus. Those things do a lot more damage than I thought they would. Longbowman. I did say this is the last turn, but I'm probably going to just have to say we got beat, and I'm going to need to... I'm going to need to rethink my approach. So the problem here is this is completely open to wipe us all out. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I imagine I can probably drag this out a bit. But time is not on my side in this scenario, so I'm trying to think, I mean, maybe next week what I can try and do is I can go back to the very start where we were building up our forces, come with a lot more siege units to end the fight early. And then if that doesn't work, we just reset we do the scenario all over again. The one thing that I am going to change out of this, we are going to find whatever workers are idle down here. Basically, I want the workers that are closest... I want to be able to build a stronghold in any cities that I can. Which is easier said than done, but... Okay, so I'll end the season. I'll rely on... I actually don't even know what killed the onager. But yeah, the challenge here is basically this put everything into... Oh, it was the onager. I put everything into taking Thermopylae. Thermopylae is now basically a quarter... just just close it all. But yeah, so the challenge here is that we put everything into Thermopylae. Thermopylae is only a quarter of the way down. I suspect that they are hurting as far as their military is concerned, but just our ability, like the thing is, they're close to their territory. They're going to be able to sort of rearm, whereas for us, we have kind of all of our work ahead of us. So what I will probably do in the next broadcast, I'm going to go back to how I started here. And essentially what it's going to be is, it's not just that I'm going to build more units, I'm specifically going to build more siege units. So essentially we're going to spend a lot of time pounding on an enemy city without having any melee units really in the area. We're going to sort of force the Athenians to come closer to us, and we'll sort of use we'll probably wind up using the archers a bit more against enemy units. But essentially, I don't want anything really to be touching the walls of the city. We'll have our fortifications set up. We'll be in a position to try and keep the Athenians from threatening our kind of the main units, the siege units. But that'll take time, and again, I'm not quite sure how much more I have in this scenario. So, anyways, I wish I made a little more progress, but like I said, it's fun to learn this stuff again. So, and we got to go through some of the fun history events. So, thank you everybody for watching. For those of you who are here for Old World, I will be back next Monday for that. I'm just trying to work out my week. So just give me a second here. Yeah, so week from now, more Old World. On this Wednesday, I'll be back to Phantom Brigade, and Friday, Cyberpunk. And then next week, Old World on Monday, but there will be a local game dev meetup on the 20th, so I will be attending that. So no Phantom Brigade there, but we will be back on the 22nd for Cyberpunk. Now, I don't have too many people online to host. There's a couple people, but I'm going to host Kilgore Trout again, who is currently doing Enslaved Odyssey to the West, maybe? Oh, thank you, Olaf. I'm glad you got through Book of Hours. I appreciate you being such a long-standing member of the community. It's actually, I'm sure it's no secret to you that I've really been struggling to start on time, and I'm kind of conscious about how that affects you. So I'm really happy that you've been able to at least see some of the stuff that I'm happy with. Like I really liked Book of Hours, and I was very happy that I got to finish that. So I don't know. I like that you got to see it. I'm sure it probably wasn't a surprise to you that I went for a lantern ending, but I thought the ending was satisfying for what I did. Okay, thank you everybody, and please enjoy Kilgore, and I will see at least some of you in a couple of days. Take care.